Get up to
Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys.
Get shit's Black Friday sale. What's up, guys? If you haven't already, please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button on the video. If you don't have time to watch this episode right now, I'd really appreciate it if you saved it to your watch later playlist on YouTube. Finally, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram or X, those links are in my description below. You are a machine, man.
Well, we'll see.
I've never seen anything like this. I mean, So when we left off with the last episode, for everyone else out there, we thought we were coming right back in here to record.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah, but they said, got to get out of here because you got to get over to Yale. We had a dinner with the professors over there.
Hey, Diane, good to see you.
Go do that.
So you guys did that. You get dinner with the professors, hang out at Skull and Bones all night.
Yeah, and we were paid homage to Skull and Bones. We put a little leaflet on their front door, inviting them to come over to the UFO discussion.
So you do a big UFO discussion today on campus, which actually, what?
Hi, Shawnee. Okay, you can't stay. That's a shame.
What did that entail? You're trying to get it as a part of the educational
curriculum? We're trying to get it into the academy, the general university community, to say, look, this is silly that that now that the United States Defense Department has acknowledged that they're lying all this time in hiding this stuff, and you got testimony coming in from the people directly involved.
He's got a spaceship named Dragon, has he? Wow.
Involved in the top secret program, acknowledging that the government's in possession of a non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft, and the bodies that they've now confirmed are non-human. You would think that would have some impact on the university. That they ought to be kind of teaching some courses about getting ready for this, but they haven't yet. So we went over to Yale. I got invited over there by some of the professors. So we went over and did a presentation today to the student body.
What professors, if you don't mind me asking?
One of the professors of philosophy was one of the professors of two professors of philosophy. In fact, one of them was an East Asian philosophy professor, and the other was an American Western philosophy guy. And then they had the student body they have a UFO student organization there.
Oh, wow.
And so that they sponsored it. So it was the students themselves that asked us to come, and they had some professors from a couple different universities. Ohio State University, a professor was there. They had a professor from University in Albany, so that they had a group of people there, and then I briefed them all on what was going on in Washington with the legislation and the hearings and the stuff like that.
Yeah, I see it all sitting right there. We're going to get into it today.
Yeah.
But now you're back in Hoboken, straight off Yale.
Yeah, it was hard to stay away. It's hard to stay away.
Well, thank you for coming back. I appreciate it. There's a lot to get into. Our first episode, we basically went through every single conspiracy of the 60s and 70s that you lived through. It was pretty incredible.
A lot of them.
Yeah. So now I'm sure there will be other cases that come up today as well that didn't come up yesterday, but specifically with ufology and the space of what's going on in our skies. You have been around this since, I believe you said, the Jimmy Carter administration.
Yeah, it was the fall of '76, right after the November election, that I got contacted.
And you had explained this quickly in our last podcast, but for people who didn't hear that, why did he contact you?
Surely I can't play CNN, no, they copyright straight away, not even at the end of the stream.
Well, what happened is that President Carter, when he was the governor of Georgia, had seen a UFO.
You dropped your comments. Good on you.
He was at a Lions Club, a speech that he was giving as the governor, and they went over to the restaurant for dinner, and there was a UFO right in the sky. It was like 2 lengths of a football field away. I mean, it wasn't like a mysterious light in the sky or anything. It was like a full UFO, and he saw it. 11 men saw it with him. He filed an official report with the U.S. Air Force and with NICAP. So when he ended up getting elected president, it turns out that he was elected on November 4th of 1976. On the 19th of November, Well, he was still down in Plains, Georgia. He hadn't even come to Washington yet. That he sent the word to have the head of the Central Intelligence Agency come down to Plains, Georgia, and brief him on the UFO issue.
It's fun trolling, isn't it, Shawnee? Especially if you're clever at it.
And it turns out that the CIA director at that time was George H.W. Bush, and that he refused to brief him, saying that he, as the president-elect, he had no need to know this information, which surprised President Carter. And so Carter, rather than taking on the CIA and spending a lot of newly earned political capital, just contacted the Congress.
Unbelievable, Diane. They got pills, suicide pills.
He said, "What's the story here? You know, I've been elected president. We're supposed to know about this? Can you tell me what the documents are that we've got?" And so that they referred it to the Science and Technology Committee of the House of Representatives, and they contacted the Congressional Research Service, which is this big professional service research operation they have at the Library of Congress. And so they set up a special investigation and research project. Now, I didn't know anything about it when it happened. I mean, I'd met Carter when he was a candidate, because I was at Jesuit headquarters down there in Washington, D.C., and I was in the public policy
Red flag is in the Jesuit headquarters
office of they call it the social ministry office at the Jesuit headquarters. So I was responsible for helping to formulate the policies of the Jesuit order with regard to all 15 of the cabinet level positions in all 8 of the major federal agencies. And so one afternoon in early May, I guess it was probably, of 1976, I was over in DuPont Circle by where our headquarters is, right on Embassy Row. And I ran into they had a new headquarters there during the primary. It was the Democratic Party primary, and they had the office for candidate Jimmy Carter. So I just popped in and said, "Look, I told him who I was, and it turns out that Stu Eisenstadt was there. Stuart Eisenstadt was his director of public policy for his campaign." So we sat down and had a long conversation, and we set up a meeting for candidate Jimmy Carter to come and meet with the heads of all 54 of the major religious denominations. They had headquarters in Washington, D.C. And so our office coordinated that, our Jesuit headquarters coordinated that. We set it up over at 100 Maryland Avenue, over at the Methodist Building on Capitol Hill. And we had a long meeting with him. We got him actually in that meeting to agree that if he were elected president, he would issue a presidential executive order cutting off all U.S. military aid to any foreign dictator that was determined to be systematically violating the human rights of his own citizens. And that is the executive order that he did in fact issue when he was elected.
When you say you guys, you're talking specifically about, like, on this case, on behalf of like the Jesuit community and all the religious.
Although, yeah, the Jesuit headquarters, we'd organized a thing called the Washington Interreligious Staff Council. There were 54 major religious denominations that had Washington, D.C. offices. They would kind of monitor legislation that was going on, et cetera, in briefing their different denominations. And Jesuit headquarters had organized bringing them all together to form a new coalition so that we could set up task forces so that we could not duplicate each other's work. And so that we had that thing set up. So when I happened to meet Stuart Eisenstadt that May of '76, I told him about the group that we had, and we'd be happy to interview Carter, and we did. And so that we formulated this plan to figure out one specific thing that we would ask him. And so we all coordinated that, and we asked him to commit to agreeing to sign such an executive order, and he did, which, interestingly enough, ended up being the executive order pursuant to which he cut off all military funding to Anastasio Somoza in Nicaragua later, and the Shah of Iran. So both of those dictatorships fell like within 6 weeks of being cut off from U.S. military aid, which originated the Iran-Contra scandal later, because the CIA people that were dedicated to trying to maintain both of those authoritarian regimes decided to go around the fact that both of them had been ousted, basically, and they wanted to set up a covert operation to try to reinstate them. And that generated the Iran-Contra scandal, which I was involved in later.
Yeah, could you actually explain? You just explained the basics there, but the parties involved with that, because this is another one that gets skipped over. A lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, Iran-Contra, CIA, Bill Casey did some." That was it. But you had a president who, at that point, there's reasonable evidence to say he already had dementia coming on, and
which time was this?
Ronald Reagan.
Well, Reagan. Well, actually, this happened right from the very beginning. This started under Carter, when President Carter issued the presidential executive order cutting off the military aid to Anastasio Somoza. He fell from power. Still back in 1978, and then in 1979, Carter cut off the military supplies to the Shah of Iran. And he fell from power in December of '79. Mm-hmm. So it was still under the Carter administration. And that was part of course, why they generated the October surprise. The whole effort to, to get Carter out of there, because he was wreaking havoc, with the covert operations of the CIA. He was actually ousting and cutting off U.S. military funding to fascist, regimes around the country.
Because of what you did.
Well, actually, as it turns out, yes. And so the bottom line is that both of those regimes had collapsed before Reagan came in. But what happened, as people may recall, is that the 52 hostages were taken in Iran after the Shah of Iran fell. The Khomeini regime came in, and they actually, the students that were supported by the Hezbollah ended up kidnapping the 52 hostages in the American embassy and holding them hostage. So there was this long set of negotiations that were going on in the final days of the Carter administration, his first administration in 1979 all through 1980. And what happened is President Carter had put together a task force to conduct these negotiations with the students and indirectly with the Hezbollah that were supporting them in Iran. And was on the brink of getting an agreement to get them removed. And all of a sudden, Bill Casey, who was the campaign director for the George H.W. Bush candidacy for the Republican nomination, they ended up reaching out to the Hezbollah back channel through Theodore Shackley, who was the director of covert operations under George Bush Sr. when he was the CIA director under President Ford, that they reached out to the Hezbollah and they made a deal with them, saying that if you will hold the hostages and not release them to the Carter administration, which would give him a big lift, and he might succeed in winning a second term. What they did is they said, if you'll agree to hold the hostages and therefore undermine his displayed capabilities, the Reagan Bush administration, when we come in, will provide TOW missiles to you in complete violation of the ban that had been placed on it. So anyway, that they made that deal, and that was handled by Bill Casey and George Bush Sr., who was the vice presidential candidate at the time, and Theodore Shackley. They organized all of that, and so they withheld the hostages. And then you'll recall when Jimmy Carter lost the election on Inauguration Day, January 21st of 1980, there was actually a split screen of Ronald Reagan being sworn in, and the hostages walking across the tarmac and boarding a plane to be freed, in case anybody missed the direct connection that was there. And that was the so-called October surprise. And there was a book written about it by Gary Sick, who was the
that's where October surprise emanated from. I never knew that.
Naval admiral who was part of the team of the National Security Council that was involved in conducting negotiations on behalf of the Carter administration. And he wrote a major book exposing the fact that that was a conspiracy that was undertaken on the part of the Bush vice presidential team that Theodore Shackley was one of the advisors to. They're the ones. So it wasn't Reagan, and most everybody knows that the Reagan Bush administration, that George Bush basically ran everything.
He did.
Oh yeah, he was not only the head of the 5412 committee, which ran all covert operations in the National Security Council. He was the one that ran the savings and loan reorganization, where they started changing all the rules governing savings and loan banks that didn't have to require security for the loans. He's the one that was in charge of the drug enforcement agency, the war on drugs.
Well, Scrappy just realized you're here.
Of course, ran the off-the-shelf enterprise during the Reagan administration. He's the
off-the-shelf enterprise.
That's the Colonel North, Oliver North enterprise.
Oh, yeah.
That generated the entire Iran conflict crisis during the Reagan Bush administration. That was all coordinated through George Bush's office. Donald P. Gregg was his national security advisor, vice presidential national security advisor. He coordinated the meetings. He had we got the internal talking papers that we got copies of them from the meetings that they had with George Bush Sr. and Donald Gregg, his national security advisor, along with Felix Rodriguez.
Oh yeah,
who was running the Ilopango airlift in Ilopango in El Salvador, So we had all that information, and so that
when you say we.
There was the Christic Institute that we set up out of the Jesuit headquarters. We set up the Christic Institute when we did the Karen Silkwood case 50 years ago. It's coming up now on the anniversary. It's going to be November 13th was 50 years ago that she was killed on the way to deliver the documents from the Kerr McGee nuclear facility to the New York Times.
Yeah, we talked about that for people who didn't see the last episode yet or are watching this. That is in the last episode. It's a pretty wild case. But you set up this Christic Institute. You get the relationship with Carter. We'll come back to the UFOs part with him, but you get the relationship with him before he's president.
That's right.
Through the Jesuit organization, effectively.
That's right.
So, it seems like faith and being a part of the Jesuit community has obviously been a huge part of your life. Did you grow up Catholic in the Jesuit sector?
I've got a sister Colleen and a brother Patty. The Irish is Patty's pig.
Yeah,
as they say. Yeah, so I was raised Catholic my whole life, but I didn't go to Catholic schools. I went to regular public high schools, and went to Harvard College and stuff. So I didn't go to Jesuit schools. But I ended up, after graduating from Harvard Law School, and we talked about it, going out and practicing for a few years. And I was so disenchanted with what it is I was discovering about the United States government that I ended up going back to Harvard, talking to John Rawls, who was the head of the Department of Philosophy, about his book called The Theory of Justice. And he invited me to come back to Harvard to do a PhD on comparative social ethics, comparing and contrasting different worldviews in the different kind of values that they had, because I was trying to get an understanding of how people could be functioning so completely differently myself from a lot of the other lawyers, and the kind of people that they represented, the things that they did, I thought was just completely antithetical to everything that I'd been learning as the proper ethics. And so I went back to the divinity school to do the PhD work. And that was where I got recruited by the Father Roger Couture, who was the professor that taught the course on the theological underpinnings of human rights. And he approached me at the end of the course and said he was kind of fascinated by some of the papers that I had written at that level. And I wanted to know that if I was interested in being interviewed by the Jesuits, because they were headquarters down in Washington, D.C., that all 100 provincials around the world had been called into Rome by the Superior General of the Jesuit Order, and they were getting set to issue a whole series of documents on social justice, 32nd General Congregation documents, they called them, declaring that the members of the Jesuit Order in the Catholic Church have an obligation every day to take active steps to deconstruct the sources of injustice, both in Western civilization and in Eastern civilization.
I like when you show up anyway, the cats get all happy.
Potentially going to have a major thermonuclear war between the superpowers. And so that they believed that their job was to deconstruct the structural sources of injustice. And it actually said that it was their obligation to do something every single day to help deconstruct those sources of injustice, equal to their obligation of preaching the mass each day.
Mm.
So it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
And so that so I had just gone to the divinity school to do the reflecting on the comparative social ethics. But I ended up getting contacted and asked if I would be allowed myself to be interviewed for that post, and I did. And so they immediately asked me to go to Washington and to help head up that office on social ministry. So that's how I got there.
Yeah, it's fascinating to get that background, because I always find especially when you have the collision of like religion and aliens in these conversations, it can get sometimes like they fly right in the face of each other. Other times they get combined in people's thoughts. But you know, to bring it back to Carter, then
is that all they reckon?
You were called in by him after he was elected to help in this process where he was trying to get information from Congress because CIA wouldn't give it to him.
Yeah.
You know, you
No,
had
he's
said
72.
yesterday when we recorded the previous episode that you had thought about aliens when you were growing up, but it wasn't, you know, it's not like every single day you were studying all of it.
No.
But, you know, at this point now you're starting to, as a lawyer on behalf of the president, go digging for the biggest secrets that could exist.
Well, it was interesting that it happened indirectly. You know, it was through Rosemary Chalk that I mentioned, I think yesterday, that Rosie Chalk, she was the executive secretary for the National Academy of Sciences, and she's the one that asked me whether I'd be interested in getting contacted by the study that the president had asked to have put together, and the Congressional Research Service had already been tasked by the president to do this investigation for them in the research project. And then they reached out to me, Dr. Marshall.
Tracy, next time Shawnee shows up and you're not here, we'll ask her what to do about the cat.
Smith, who was the head of the Science and Technology Division, called me on the phone, who was a friend of Rosemary Chalk, and asked if I would be interested in participating. And I got it cleared with the superiors at the Jesuit headquarters. They thought this was an important issue. And
they did.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that was really interesting. When I told them that I'd been asked to be special counsel, I talked to Father Bill Davis, who was my immediate superior, who was the director of the social ministry office.
Look after the kitty cats, Trace.
Assistant provincial for each of the 10 provinces of the United States. To be our board of directors. So we had a board to go to. So Father Davis went to the board, the 10 assistant provincials for social justice, and they all agreed that this was an important issue. That obviously, if the president of the United States wanted to have information about the UFO issue, they realized that this was an extraordinarily important issue, and I was authorized to participate. So that's how it started.
Yeah.
And then when I was asked to...
Tracy, my cat's always got a runny nose, one of my cats. And it's not it's very noticeable. And he's had it for years too.
When Dr. Marshall Smith asked me to contact the Vatican to see whether we could get access, with the Jesuit headquarters could get access to the archives.
When was this?
This was in January of 1977. Right after, just after the inauguration.
So in coordination with all this stuff you're doing with Carter, this is a part of it.
Yes, yeah. And so I ended up going back to the headquarters and saying, look, I've been asked by Dr. Marshall Smith to contact the Vatican to see if we could get access to the archives, anything they had in the archives about the UFO phenomenon or the extraterrestrial civilization that was assumed to be responsible for the UFOs, and that went back to the provincials, and they agreed to have us write the letter. So we wrote the letter out of the Jesuit headquarters to the Vatican, asking for access to the information about the UFOs in the Vatican archives.
What was that conversation like, though, with your, I forget his name.
Good question.
Father Bill Davis.
Bill Davis. Yeah,
well,
not the golfer, John
No, it was funny. Bill Davis was was interesting. The Jesuits are interesting guys. I found,
I've heard.
they all have at least one PhD. It's a requirement, a condition precedent for being in the society. Many of them have more than one PhD, actually. So they have to go through the entire undergraduate school, and of course they've been around since 1547.
Mm-hmm.
And so that early requirement that they have these academic credentials was absolutely unique in Western civilization. I mean, the level of education that they have. They run 28 universities in the United States,
including Georgetown.
That's right, including Georgetown. And they also are the primary scholars at the Vatican. They're the theologian scholars. They also run the many of the pontificates, the papal commissions. They're the leading diplomats primarily for the Vatican State. They're extraordinarily highly trained professionals, and they do a lot of the intelligence work actually for the Vatican.
Yeah, what is that? When you say intelligence work, what in 2024, what does that mean?
Well, it's like the Vatican is the Vatican State. They're actually a national sovereignty,
mm-hmm.
And that they have diplomatic corps. They have ambassadors to each of the different countries, and they have an intelligence service. And that it's mostly Jesuits that are, because a lot of it is analysis, foreign policy.
The tail end of that Jaguar does look bodgy.
Analysis, international analysis, history studies they need to do, so that the Jesuits perform this kind of service for the Vatican, for the Pope. They work directly under the Pope. They're not under the authority of the Vatican. I mean, most people don't realize that.
Really?
The Jesuit order is the only one that they're directly accountable to the Pope himself, directly.
So that
each of them.
But that feels like semantics, because that feels like the same thing.
No, it's different. Because there's two different structures. There's the structure in the Catholic Church where you have the local parish priest is like a private. Then they have a Monsignor in some of the parishes who is like a corporal. Then they have the assistant bishops who are like the first officers. You have a lieutenant. Then you have the bishops that are like captains. You have the archbishops that are like colonels. Then you have the general officers that are the cardinals. And then you have the conclave of the cardinals that come all together. That is like a major cabinet, if you will, for the Pope. And so that there's a whole military structure to that order. But the Jesuits are not involved in that. The Jesuits are completely separate. The Jesuits don't run parishes. They don't run parish churches. They're professionals. They're lawyers and doctors and scientists and diplomats and other trainings that they have their PhDs in, and they answer directly to the Pope.
All the types of jobs that make society go, if you will.
Yeah, or make a nation state go. And so that they're the lawyers and they're the doctors and they're the scientists and the scholars for the most part. They run the universities, etc. And so that when I was asked to become general counsel for their American headquarters, I thought that was a worthy kind of post. I thought it was an extraordinarily interesting position to be.
Let's not forget the Jesuit oath. This guy took the Jesuit oath, so he's willing to dash babies' heads against rocks for the Jesuits.
And we had access then to the Jesuits in 43 different countries that were provided intelligence to our office. We got to meet with them. Father Bill Davis has been in every one of the 43 countries where all the Jesuits are. He was the photographer of the Jesuit magazine. That America magazine was their like Time magazine that they have, a monthly magazine, and that he was the principal photographer for them prior to being the head of the social ministry office. So I was out in Washington. There I was in Washington D.C. In that position, I became a member of the bar of Washington, in addition to being a member of the bar of the Southern District of New York. And so I was functioning as legal counsel in that office. So I got to formulate proposed policies with regard to all 15 of the major cabinet position offices, positions on defense policy, international policy, foreign policy, economic policy.
Wait, in the U.S. government?
In the U.S. government, yeah.
What do you mean you got to format policy for those?
For the Jesuit order, for what we would propose.
What you would want.
Yeah, what we would say. Yeah. We said this, to say here, you're asking for, $800 billion for military. We'd say that we don't believe that's a just position, that's way too much military emphasis, that, you need to have more funds for PL 480, which is sharing excess agricultural products in the United States with people that are dying of starvation around the world, for example. That we should have increased Social Security for our people. We should have better medical benefits, etc. We were involved in a social ministry. And we were advocating that is an integral aspect of the Judeo-Christian social ethics, which is part of what I was studying at Divinity School.
Were you guys like registered lobbyists on K Street kind of deal,
no.
Or is this because you're a religious organization you can have?
That's right. You don't need to be registered as lobbyists at all.
Okay.
No.
But when you had this conversation with
Father
Davis,
yeah,
and he says, "Yeah, go for it. Help out Carter with UFOs." Yeah. Was there any type of philosophical conversation about, like, well, wait a minute, what does this mean for our religion?
Well, it was a
great question. This young guy's asking some good questions.
Interesting. At that point, it was such an obvious, great position to be in, to be able to do that. I hadn't been asked yet, but I was shortly thereafter. I was asked by Dr. Marcia Smith to do a seminar for the top 50 scientists in SETI, which is the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, out of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena. And they asked if I would go and deliver a closed-door seminar for them. And then we began to have these intense discussions at Jesuit headquarters, saying, "Okay, you got your undergraduate degree in American constitutional law and stuff, and history and political science from Harvard, and you got your law degree from Harvard Law School and in American constitutional law and foreign policy and stuff. But you just started your PhD work on theology at the Divinity School. You haven't completed that yet, so we have to have some discussions about, if you're going to be asked to deliver a 3-hour seminar to the top 50 scientists to SETI, what are we going to be saying here theologically? And what's essential to understand is that theology, at its very highest levels, has to do with the extraordinarily subtle realms of science. This is a science that we're dealing with here. The faculties that our human species is capable of, that are part of the entire religious traditions of meditation and the siddhas and dietary habits and in abstention from overstimulating your body with too much eating, too much drinking, too much casual sexual activity that is so stimulating to your body. The subtle discernment that we have of actually other faculties that we have are smothered by that activity. And so that's a science. There's a science to this, of learning how to meditate and how to do all these kind of things to kind of increase your spiritual sensitivity. And that this is a science. It's not hocus pocus. It's not all mysteria tremendum. The Jesuits approach this in a very, very practical, realistic kind of scientific way. And so that what we did is we sat down and had a set of conversations about the fundamentals, about what our position is, that we're going to be taking on the cosmological question, the questions of the origin of the universe. How is it that our material universe came into being out of an otherwise infinite and eternal sea of completely undifferentiated consciousness? What was the motive point, the to generate the initial discontinuity in this field of infinite and eternal undifferentiated consciousness. What was the motive force for that initial discontinuity? And when the discontinuity multiplied through a process which is like mitosis into generating more and more and more of these discontinuities that ended up becoming inchoate quantum fields, actually. And the inchoate quantum fields would then come together and form, leptons and muons and the electrons and protons, and the actual material manifestation of the universe actually takes place out of an infinite and eternal field of consciousness. And so that actually the actual inchoate quantum fields are in fact nodals of consciousness. Mm. So consciousness pervades the entire material universe, and yet outside of the boundaries, the boundaries of the total sum total of mass and energy in the universe, there's an infinite and eternal sea of completely undifferentiated consciousness that abides. And there's a lot of factual questions that obtain as to whether or not we as incarnated human beings, whether we have access to for example, do we have a faculty that is capable of directly and immediately discerning the unitive phenomenon that bonds every single ultimately irreducible integer of matter in the entire physical universe into one unified harmonic whole? Do we have a faculty like seeing or hearing that is evolving teleologically in our human family, where we can actually experientially discern that unitive phenomenon, so that we can discern what kind of conduct, individual or collective, is either harmonious with or disharmonious to the natural order of the universe? Mm. This is what natural law is all about. And this is an area of intense theological scholarship. The millions of man hours and women hours in the convents have been spent reflecting on that. In that the Jesuit order houses a lot of that theological information in the Catholic Church.
It's fascinating because it seems like any conversation like that, where you are talking about the galaxy and you're talking about things that are even beyond what we've been able to get a true concept of yet, like it goes outside of what the traditional Bible teaches, and yet you're having these conversations inside of a Catholic organization. That's certainly fascinating. Yeah. The second thing, though, is that you're the general counsel at this point.
Yeah.
So your job is to represent the interests of something that you do believe in, right? Like you're a Jesuit, proud Catholic, the whole bit. So you're part of an organization that you respect and admire and believe in the idea. But you're being presented with something that's so complex and gets right to the meaning of life, like, UFOs or alien existence.
Yeah.
And yet you have to go into the room objectively as an attorney to your clients in this case and say, what do we think? And the reason I put it that way is because essentially you are going in there. I don't mean to call you a robot or something, but as a lawyer, again, objectively, you have to be able to say, okay, I'm going to go with what my guys want to do here. At the same time, though, you're still a human being, and you're still now getting access to things that, or at the precipice of getting access to things that you haven't had access to before, that are certainly enough to make you question some stuff. So did the human being side of you ever get in the way of, like, just assuming you were going to do exactly take the stance that they wanted to take?
I told them from the very beginning that I wasn't going to do that. Mm. I told them that I wasn't there to represent the Catholic Church, and I wasn't there to do it. What I was there to do is to advise them. That I was trained independently. I had independent judgments about what it is that was necessary to be done. I would share that information with them. I would make proposals to them, and they would either accept them or modify them. And then we would go forward, and we would get some kind of a consensus among our board, who are the assistant provincials, the 10 assistant provincials in the United States for social ministry. And then we would advocate this. So I was always, that was one of the things that disturbed the people in the law firms where I was, is I was never obliged to do
Okay, this isn't what I expected to be. I might change the channel here. Hang on.
Do whatever their clients wanted us to do. That wasn't the kind of lawyer I was. What I was doing is saying, this is what you should be doing. You know, that, you know, you shouldn't be racially discriminating against people, you know, in your pricing of your stuff for the A&P Corporation, for example. You know, you shouldn't do that. You know, you shouldn't be discriminating against people in the, you know, Arkansas, Missouri power company, you know, just to increase the rates for black people because you could do it. You shouldn't be doing that.
Okay, I found so that's a bit slow, guys. Wasn't what I expected. Because he's a Jesuit. I didn't know he was a Jesuit.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to have fellowship with us today. I have Jamie Walden with me today, and we are going to talk about several things that is going to be really interesting. And I'm excited to have him. He's a truth seeker and he just an awesome man of God. How are you doing today, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. Just got done with their meeting with the pros and back in my office studio thing here and ready to go.
Yeah.
It's freezing cold outside. The wind's blowing hard. It looks like my feet is breaking up a little bit, but it may just be because of the weather blowing in here in the Rockies.
Yeah, that's the enemy playing games. I deal with that pretty often.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, we'll push through that. You said you're in the Rockies, so I get it. I guess it is getting cold because it's getting chilly here in Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, today I think the high is 32. That's not normal, but yeah, it was snowing this morning when I got up. But typically it's 40s, 50s. It's usually pretty nice where we're at.
Nice. Yeah, that's 32. So it's starting to get cold, but I guess it could be worse. I like the cold though. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I'd rather be cold than too hot, if that makes sense. People laugh at me when I say that, but I'd rather be cold than to be sweaty.
Yeah, well, we got to live in the Dominican Republic for a couple of years as missionaries down there, and it was awesome. I got no complaint. I'm from Illinois and Iowa, you know, growing up in Illinois and Iowa, and I'm like, man, get me out of the winter. What I wouldn't give to get away from winter. But as far as being able to enjoy the winters, you can't get better than the Rocky Mountains. We get nonstop outdoor adventure sports 4 seasons a year, so it's pretty awesome out here.
Yeah. So where do you think things are headed? Because there's a lot of people speculating, but I think there's very little truth out there. There's a lot of muddying of the waters. And I just, it seems like the current president-elect has good intentions, though, like you've said, and I agree, you always keep your eyes wide open to prepare for anything. How do you view what is coming? Because it seems like the current administration is going to do everything they can to prevent him from being successful on day one.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of competing perspectives on stuff out there. And I try to, deal with things with first and foremost spiritual integrity, but then also intellectual integrity too, as you're kind of navigating the bombardment of information, because we do have an information saturated corporate reality right now where it is hard to didactically really break apart all the different things that are going on because there's so much coming at us. And in fact, that is a part and parcel to one of the strategies from leading psychologists from Stanford Institute, which is different than Stanford University, but it's called the Cloward and Piven strategy. And initially it was rolled as a means by which to operate through kind of socioeconomic type of spheres. And it had to do with different domestically based socioeconomic policies. But they figured out how to adapt this strategy, this Cloward and Piven strategy, to make it a part of what we would call the mockingbird media, right? To right. Be able to basically bombard our sensory perception from all the different avenues of sensory perception to overwhelm it to such a degree that you're not able to actually piece anything of value together. That's kind of the Cliff Notes Jamie version of the Cloward and Piven strategy is to keep you in this constant state, this fluid, dynamic, ever-moving, ever-evolving, shifty state so that you can never put together.
Hey, Shawnee, welcome back.
And which is why I'm a big macro guy. I mean, that probably comes from just the time in the...
I changed the channel on that what I was watching because it wasn't where I thought it was going. So this is new.
Marine Corps and stuff like that.
Welcome back, Shawnee.
got to always think big picture mission set, so then I can know and understand what my piece of the pie is, how it relates to the overall mission accomplishment. So when we look at the macro perspective of what's going on, there's actually a proverb in Proverbs 4. It says, don't go to the left, don't go to the right, right? It's like walk circumspectly, walk firmly with your Lord, to the right or to the left, even politically to the right or to the left, right? And so I just want to deal with things eyes wide open. So with regards to what's transpired here domestically, and then we can get into how it relates to internationally and globally, but domestically with President-elect Trump, and then appointees of the different appointable positions, right? Cabinet positions, heads of different organizations and stuff like that. On the one hand, we ought to go, praise God, right? Like, take the win, dude, take the win. All the hyper conspiratorial truther movement people, get off of it. Take the win, okay? However, I always have the caveat, but take the win with eyes wide open, okay? So let's address the win. The win first and foremost. I am a familial acquaintance with his appointee, the Director of National Intelligence. I have a friend who just spoke with Homan this morning, the border czar. There's other, like this Pete Hegseth, who's going to be the Secretary of Defense, right? There's from Tulsi Gabbard to the Homan to all these guys. Like, dude, he is stacking the deck with some heavy hitters. Heavy hitters.
Sure.
I mean, you're talking about a pendulum swing in Americana, classical American-based values and ethos system in a way that we could have never fathomed, and in a way that we should go, praise God. And I'm saying Absolutely. That. I'm actively saying that. Praise God. Like, you're talking about restoration economically, geopolitically, militaristically, domestic policy-based stuff, infrastructure, security, cybernetic security, electrical gear-based security, border security, and everything in between, a restoration of family values, a repudiation of LGBT and the pedophiles. I mean, he's come out and openly said, I'm coming for the pedophiles. Like, you're not going to sexualize our children anymore through the public school systems. Praise God. I'm going, praise God. But I also have eyes wide open and understand that what the adepts of the mystery schools are doing, where they're taking us, where they want to go, what the end state is. And I also know exactly how the adepts, for lack of a better word, operate through human mass consciousness or collective consciousness, hive mind-based consciousness, to accomplish their desired end state. So I always say, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Take the win. Wickedness is being punched right in their freaking mouths. Their teeth are being broken in their mouths. Praise God, right? The wholesale industrialized slaughter of children is going to stop. It's going to continue on, but it's going to be greatly reduced. Praise God. The sexualizing of our kids. Praise God. The infiltration of fifth column forces throughout our country to the tunes of millions is going to be pushed back and backlog and the border resecured. Praise God. Foreign entanglements, according to his platform, are going to be reduced. Praise God. The usury, the unjust weights and measures of our fractional reserve banking are going to be backpedaled at least a little bit. Praise God. Praise God. However,
absolutely,
know and understand this, that they are taking us somewhere, and Trump and this administration is part and partial to it at the exact same time. So that's why even we titled this show Eyes Wide Open. I say eyes wide open. Just don't be this unwitting dope, like die hard on this pendulum, and don't be this anti-everything on the pendulum. Like, walk the middle circumspectly with your God, walk humbly with your God with your eyes wide open. Here's the deal, is it was about 50 or so years ago when documents and white papers started being produced, and more in particular being refined and reanimated under the Obama administration, his 8 years in office, that specifically talked about the construction of a oligarch-based money usury, high perverse, LGBT, everything wicked possible system to prop it up and to throw it in everybody's faces to the point where it would make them reel and shriek back in horror at the depths of the darkness and the wickedness. This was their words over 50 years ago, that they would erect this system, build up this entire system, what we would consider the deep state, right? So I'll just use that language. People are familiar with that language. This deep state, oligarch, occultic based, Hollywood, DC, kind of, Bohemian Grove based, high level, licentious wickedness stuff. Throw it in your faces for about 10 to 15 years. Sound familiar? Or about that time frame since Obama. And then at the appointed time, it would be building 7. There would be a perfect controlled demolition of that old system, the quote unquote old system, and they would bring in a counterfeit light that would look like a restoration of family values, of Americana, nationalistic, patriotic pride, a restoration of highly moralistic values, because they wanted to show the ugly face, the ugly head of the depths of what perversity would do to the children, to the economy, to the psyches, to whatever. Blah, blah, blah. And then at the appointed time, they would raise up somebody to have a controlled demolition of it. And through that awakening, that was their word 50 years ago, through a great awakening, they would bring in a golden age. Sound familiar? A golden age through a great awakening to a restoration of peace and security. And that would be the basis, the foundational basis of what we know biblically as the Great Deception. Okay, what I just described to you is literally everything I've heard for the last 4 years. All the language, all the words, all the intention, all the everything. And by the way, the centrality of this Great Deception would be this hardcore pivot through all kinds of strange means that don't really make sense. Again, going back to Cloward and Piven, that would be hyper Middle Eastern centric, in particular Israeli/Jewish centric, in particular Jerusalem centric. And that whatever the counterfeit awakening would come in for somehow they would pivot the focus of all the world to the Middle East and to Jerusalem and to basically a political based corporate headquarters, we'll say, a political based headquarters based out of Jerusalem proper in Israel. That would be the modus operandi and the trajectory of what this light, this counterfeit light, this Aquarian age based light would bring about. Okay, now for the listeners out there, did any of that sound familiar? Has anybody paid attention to the appointees? It was actually publicly listed in the Israeli Times that there has never been a more pro-Jew, pro-Israeli president and cabinet than what Trump has installed right now. It is the most hardcore political Zionist. I make that distinction. Political Zionist is different than biblical Zionism, right? Like Zion is everything to the Lord is about Zion. Political Zionist is a whole different Antichrist spirit movement, right? So you got to make that distinction between political Zionism and Christocentric Zionism. They're two totally different things. So this is the most pro-political Zionist hardcore push in the history of humanity, even prior to the Balfour Declarations and the white papers that came out to the Lord Rothschilds and the Balfour Declarations and all these other different white papers that they brought out to create a Jewish state in Palestine, right? So there's high level things going on here. High level things that the NAR believers are going to be, the Dominion preterists, millennialists are going to be deceived in. The hardcore Torah observant movement, which is sweeping evangelicals like a firestorm, they're going to be deceived. The Jews are going to be deceived. Muslims are being brought under this new reconciliation between Judaism and Christianity and the rest of the world through the Noahide laws. They're going to be deceived. The masses are going to be deceived. and the nominal American patriot constitutionalist who has no biblical background whatsoever, and they could care less. So we'll say the secular humanist Americans are going to be deceived. And so that's why I say, take the wins. Yes, praise God. Eyes wide open at the exact same time. Both can be true at the same time. Eyes wide open, that yes, praise God. There's good things happening in our nation right now.
Absolutely. And everything that we're at right now could have not happened unless they completely dismantled it for the last 4 years. That was an intentional part of the plan. Many people, kick and scream about how the election was blah, 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 blah in 2020, but that had to happen like that in order to expose the toxicity of the situation. Otherwise, no one would have believed what he's going to do, and it gives him full, unvetted authority to do so because people have just completely seen how dark and demonic the other side is. So it lowers everybody's defenses, and they're just like, praise God, this is happening. Just let's do it.
You know what, Christopher, my wife and I were talking about this the other day, and it's like she's always has a way of like reducing all my over communicating ability. And says, just goes, she said, it's simple then. Good cop, bad cop. And I go, oh my goodness. Yeah, you just summarized 45 minutes of me fire hosing you with that. It's good cop, bad cop. They give you the good cop. So then when they bring in, they give you the bad cop. So then when they bring in the good cop, you're like, actually, yeah, I'll do whatever you ask of me. Oh, this is for my country. Oh, this is for the good. Oh, this is about, oh, you're going to make a plea deal with me? Oh, you're going to do, yeah, man, I'll tell you, I'll give you anything you want. So, but what they don't understand is both police officers are talking behind closed doors to make sure that they get their acquired instinct. They just come at it from two different opposing angles so that you'll acquiesce to one or the other. You'll either break under the bad cop or you'll acquiesce to the good cop, and no matter what, they win. So that's exactly what's going on here with regards to the American political spectrum. And again, that's not to say, let's say like a Pete Hegseth or Tulsi Gabbard or whatever. Or it's not to say any of these people are malicious, nefarious, plotting, scheming, planning, and whatever. It just means that there's a higher level play that most people don't even know that they're a part of. And this gets back in again to the great deception. Here's the nature of a deception is you cannot self-evaluate that you are deceived. It doesn't matter how much objectivity, no matter how much empirical data is put in your face, no matter how much evidence is given to the contrary. That is the nature. It's not ignorance. Ignorance and deceptions are two totally different things. So you cannot self-evaluate that you are deceived. It's an impossibility, hence a deception. So when we're talking about a great deception and the biblical attribute that even the elect would be deceived if it were possible, well, you don't deceive the elect with a boot on your neck and a hammer and sickle stamped on your forehead, right? And the Holodomor famine in the land. That would not deceive anybody. That would make you fight. That would make you double down. That would make you push. That would make you rebel. That would make you do all kinds of things. Deceiving the elect does not come through communistic, theosophy-based, New World Order, FEMA camp, gun in your face. That is not a deception. A deception is light. It is peace. It is security. It is a counterfeit millennial reign.
And prayers for little Kitty as well, Trace.
All the attributes of the millennial reign of Christ without the judgment of Christ. That is the deception. And it will be hyper spiritual. Notice it's the false prophet who is on the scene first, paving the way for the Antichrist, right? It comes through hyper-spiritualism, and not just hyper-spiritualism in a general sense, in a New Age or occultic or Vishnu, Hindu, Shinto, whatever kind of avenue. It's hyper-spiritualism through monotheistic worship. It is hyper-spiritualism through the Abrahamic faith. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, the three primary faiths on the face of the planet. Because what's interesting about the attributes of the monotheistic, the Abrahamic religions, is that all the other religions out there, including New Agers, they're all in agreement with Jesus. Most people don't know that. They receive Christ, they receive God, Yahweh Elohim,
Tracy, I said prayers for little Kitty as well.
of the Bible. They receive him and they add him to their pantheon of gods. So they're already in agreement with these baseline attributes of morality, or like we'll say cosmic governance through an all-powerful being. They already receive that. So the great deception on the face of the earth will actually be, again, hyper spiritual in nature, and it will be Jerusalem Abrahamic faith-based centric. Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. This is what we get into ecumenism, right, based stuff. And this is why what Trump as a Kabbalist and the Babylonian Talmudic stuff and the Noahide laws adoption, which occurred in 1991, March of 1991, the U.S. adopted the Noahide laws as kind of the ruling supreme-based laws by which all of our laws are subordinate to. The United Nations adopted the Noahide laws by which they say all global governance is subordinate to the Noachian or the Noahide laws out of the United Nations. And the reason why all this is significant is because the whole purpose of the Noahide laws is that it reconciles Judaism with all other non-Jewish religions. That's the Noahide laws. They actually say it was the law given to Adam, and then through Noah, the survivor of obviously the great deluge in the antediluvian era on the face of the earth, God gave that as a law of the land, but then he drew out the Jews for himself, and then he gave them the Torah. That ultimately the Noahide or Noachian laws are what are for all the rest of humanity. What's interesting about the Noahide laws is idolatry is punishable by death by beheading. That's what all the rabbinical studies say, is it's punishable by death by beheading. That's interesting because the Antichrist who rises and
Strikes our head as we strike their heel.
himself up as God in the temple of God and Jerusalem God and puts an end to the daily sacrifice. All this thing it's all Israel centric. Everything's about Israel. Everything was be Jewish. Jerusalem and Israeli centric. And the punishment is death by beheadings, which is actually already legislated, not just in the continental United States, but also on a global government's level. So then when you get into the Abraham Accords with Kushner and Trump, and then you get into saying, I will be the president that finally creates peace in the Middle East, while everybody's saying peace and security, then you'll have sudden destruction. You have the Kushner-based family and what's going on with Gaza, clearing the lane, which is interesting because it talks about the Antichrist setting up his tents, establishing great structures between the sea and between the great mountain Zion. Kushner's on record saying how perfect the real estate is going to be once they get all the Palestinians out of Gaza, and they can restructure all that area to have this primo beachfront real estate on the Mediterranean of Israel, between Israel and Jerusalem. I mean, it's like you can write this stuff as they're saying it out loud. Yeah. So anyways, I know I'm rambling here, but what I just want level than what the nationalistic fervor is wanting to create. And again, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Yes, good. Champion it. Be an activist. Like, yes, these are good things. Wickedness and darkness and the sexualization of our children, all these things, it is being punched right in its freaking mouth. Praise God. That's so awesome. A return to a constitutional-based, ethos within our culture. However, when you look at it from a strategic global sphere and a biblical world eschatology worldview, there actually are taking us to a next level. And in fact, I would say what's about ready to be sown here in the in the near future, well, this is just straight speculation, right? So this is Jamie's speculation, but it's informed speculation, that this will be the last softening in infrastructure-based implementations before the actual beast system type stuff can come online. This is the last salvo of galvanizing the collective conscious for the big show.
Yeah. Speaking of the deception, someone in the chat mentioned, what's our thought on Q? And I haven't even asked you, but I will tell you right now that Q is a PSYOP. That's CIA PSYOP 100%. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that.
I've talked to guys in CIA and DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, and they're like, "Oh yeah," they laugh. That was basically the only response. Was like, "Oh yeah, that's us." Like that's very overt. And again, notice that in a lot of the QAnon stuff, which this is true with a lot of stuff that's going on out there, which again is a layer that.
Geez, Diane, if that's true, Russia's on their border. Wow. I reckon they're going to try and trigger World War III before Trump gets in. That seems to be what they're planning. Wow, if that's true, they're on the border. I'm stunned.
People need to know and understand is with the advent of AI and AGI, general intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and machine learning capabilities is a lot of times, even like this QAnon movement, there's actually not a single human being that's driving any of it. It actually has the capacity,
right.
It has the capacity to pull in metadata. I'm talking like these threat fusion centers and quantum-based computing of D-Wave quantum computers, of which there's only, from last I knew, there's only 5 on the face of the earth. Nobody can really understand how quantum, it's actually like sentient, it's alive, it's working through quantum. Nobody knows how it is. I remember, I'm paraphrasing the quote because I'll butcher it, from one of the initial engineers of the D-Wave quantum computer when they turned it on. He said, "We don't know how it works, but it's alive." It was like being at the altar of an alien god. That's what he said. He said, we have no control over it. It's demonically infused. I mean, again, big picture, remember about the false prophet creates an image of the beast and it's given the power to speak. That sounds like AGI, right? Artificial General Intelligence. And so anyways, with this QAnon movement stuff is, and a lot of the bots, a lot of the different traffic, I believe Elon Musk said the other day, like there's 3 million bots on X. They don't even exist. They're literally AI generated people, and you would never know the difference, that are putting out the tweets, putting out the information, and there's no human being behind it. Nobody can conceptualize what they're capable of computer generating based. But anyways, all that to say is that from the guys that I've personally spoken to about Q is 100% an AGI-based system. There's actually no human being driving it, although the intelligence agencies kind of oversee it. And it has the capability to pull in metadata from every type, every text, every like, every swipe, your view times, your whatever, the passive microphones in your cell phones in your house, on your smart TVs and your smart appliances and your Alexas and your whatever and your Ring doorbells. And it actually is able to disseminate the metadata from the masses and then put out very particular language based on that 100%. Metadata to lead everybody where it wants to lead them. So it's
you're 100%. I've intercepted communications electronically on that database, and what it does is, you're 100% right. It's quantum based. It studies the hand movements of Trump. It anticipates body language, and then the metadata that it collects on the masses, it formulates such a believable narrative that people actually buy into it. But it is all deception, guys. I know many of you may think that it is real because it has done this, has predicted that. You don't understand how genius smart these quantum AGI platforms are. It's beyond perception and comprehension of the intelligence that they operate level at.
They've got that gargoyle at Denver Airport, and it's basically AI and has a conversation with you as you talk to it. So they're already doing this. They've already got the image and intelligence inside the image.
It's unfathomable. Like I had the pleasure and the blessing of being able to spend a weekend with Hugo de Garis, who is the creator of the artificial brain, and
Wow.
and he operates. His brain operates on a wavelength I can't even comprehend. He's not a believer, but it's awesome. I got to share the gospel with him. Super cool. You know, hyper cerebral. You know, incredibly Mensa beyond intelligence. I mean, the dude created an artificial brain. I'm talking neurological synapses. He actually has been what's the word? Exiled, I believe, from Australia and exiled in China. So he had to operate with China to create this artificial brain. Anyways, I had the privilege of spending time with him in a green room for a whole weekend, actually in Missouri, in Branson, Missouri. And him and a couple of the other guys, like, you know, some of these other guys that worked at Skunk Works and did different stuff like that. We had this big conference that Steve Quayle was hosting. And
check this out, guys. I got a bag of chips out. And look at the animals hassling for them. And they don't realise it's chili chips. They're not going to like it. You won't like it. It's chili chips, mate. I'll tease them with it.
And they were the speakers, and I was helping Steve out in the green room, and so it was awesome because I just got to sit around for about 3 days straight. You know, Richard Dolan, all these guys from the UAP, UFO program, reverse engineer, anti-gravitical propulsion stuff, and the leading transhumanists. And the majority of them are non-believers, which is something I love about Steve, is he understands the value of speaking to those that are in the world doing it without being like, oh, you can't talk to them because they're not a Christian. I'm like, those are the ones you should be talking to more than anybody else.
And that creepy blue horse, Shawnee on top of the building, that creepy blue horse. And apparently there's a heap of underground tunnels at Denver Airport. Like there's more underground than what's above ground.
Right.
I think it's the Illuminati's airport. It's something like that.
So anyways, Hugo de Garis is awesome. He's a funny guy. I mean, it's so intriguing to sit with them and hear how their brains process the world around them. Anyways, all that to say is that to him, nanotech is laughable. He goes, nanotech is what we in the biotech interface world use as a neurolinguistic soundbite for the masses because they have no concept. They can't even conceptualize what we can do with Planck tech. So I would challenge everybody. Like he went to gluons and the whatever-ons and blah, blah. He went down the size of technology that they're capable of. Again, this guy isn't some armchair conspiracy theorist. The dude literally created an artificial brain, the only one on the face of the earth that exists. And so when he talks, I listen, right? Same with all these other guys that worked in different black projects, you know, on Skunk Works and Area 51, you know, as it's commonly known in these other programs. But he was describing their capabilities of, and all I can say is, like, there's absolutely nothing a human being can do against the technologies that have been released on the world. There is no defense against it other than the discernment and the covering of the blood of Jesus Christ and the power of the Holy Spirit, because the cat is out of the bag and there ain't no way you're getting it back in it after. And this isn't new. This isn't like they're developing it, they're working on it, they're working out the kinks, they're doing whatever. This is OG, old school tech that they have mastered and implemented. So even as you're watching like the rocketry program with SpaceX, and then it's it's affiliates in both Europe and China and the other different competing private sector space agencies, what they're showing you is a joke. It's literally optics. It's straight optics with what they have. You know, anti-gravitical propulsion, the ability to do ELF, EMF, waveform-based stuff to scramble your neurology, voice of God.
Shawnee, I didn't get time to watch it myself.
Technology,
It was Gabe's birthday yesterday, so I had to spend all day with her, except for the stream.
Like, these are basics directed.
She turned 60. We're going away this weekend.
energy weapons and, you know, like all this stuff. Like, this is so radical what they actually have access to. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't sensationalism. This is just biotech sphere 101 that the general public can't even conceive that they're victims of. Every waking second of their life, they're being bombarded by these emerging technologies. Okay, so now let me connect. As I'm talking, I'm thinking at the same time, which is a little weird, but it's making me think of how interesting it is, the unity, the marriage between Elon Musk and Trump and the Trump administration. Speaking of this, if anybody knows who Elon Musk's mom is, if anybody's done any deep dive into Elon Musk is, you would know that everything that we start off talking about with eyes wide open, you would have eyes incredibly wide open, that he is front and center of every single aspect that Trump has said he's going to do and what he's going to do. It should be very intriguing when you talk about a prophet that undergirds a particular guy and is able to operate through technology to unify. How about peace and security? What about if I offered you free energy?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that kind of dictate that I can bring about peace? What if I performed marvelous signs and wonders, even calm down the fires from the sky? What if I was able to do that because I understand how to formulate plasma at a molecular level in low Earth orbit through directed energy weapons from a conglomeration of space-based platforms? I just told you that they have the...
And that could be where the false prophet calls down fire from heaven. It's probably a laser satellite.
The only reason why I know this is because I can read about it. I can read the white papers. I can read the scientific papers, right? What if I was able to do that? What if I was able to overnight broker a deal and in the hostilities in Russia and Ukraine, get China to back off from moving on Taiwan, quell and unify North Korea and South Korea, and stop the borders and the fifth column forces bringing in all the fentanyl and do this? What if I could broker a deal in Israel to create a two-state solution from which in Jerusalem an international governing body would restore and base out global governance so that we don't have to keep having this tit for tat and restore all the global economies, because every major economy in the world is in free fall collapse right now. What if I could do that and then offer you
Our economy's not in free fall. We've got a strong economy.
Technologies that you would marvel at, that you couldn't even conceptualize their capabilities all at the same time? Would you not go, wow, peace and security, finally, peace and security? And and what if I could unify Jews, Christians, and Muslims all under the same God that they already all say they worship? If I could do that, would you follow me?
Think about it.
Would you follow me? Would you trust me? Would you follow me? Because I could show you, I could walk you through over a short period of time, let's say a couple years, I could walk you through and let you test my character and the authenticity of what I said I'm going to do, and then carry out what I promised I was going to do, and then actually usher in an Aquarian age, a great awakening, a golden age, a restoration of all these good things to restore peace and security, to fill your coffers on a personal level and at a corporate level, fill the coffers economically, at the same time increase moralism and family values and spiritualism, not humanistic Scientology, but spiritual based things, and then roll out technologies to alleviate disparities and inequalities and create equity and restore health and defeat cancer and have Wi-Fi for everybody, high-speed internet for everybody all at the same time for free. Like, you see that this is why we have to go in eyes wide open. Eyes wide open all the time.
Sadly, you're 100% right. And to understand this perspective, this is why he mentioned looking at things on the macro. If you tried to look at it on the ground level, nearly impossible because of the amount of data coming and going. But you have to step back and look at the big picture. Look at what the Pope is doing right now, unifying all the religions of the world, paving the way for exactly what you just said.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is the Pope, even this Pope Francis, this goes into work by Dr. Tom Horn, right? And Vatican and different aspects of what he's written on multiple different layers is this Pope has been put in place for controlled demolition. He's been put in place for controlled demolition for the last Pope because
I'm getting notified by Phil. He went last night. I was just about to go to sleep though.
He has so disenfranchised and disenchanted the majority of the Catholics, which are 1.8 billion or 2.2 billion people on the face of the earth, that he has been erected to be this hardcore Marxist, socialist, reprobate, completely anti-historical Catholic ethos-based Pope, so that when he is torn down, they replace him with a reawakening of classically held Catholic doctrines. It's genius. It's just tactics 101. You don't have to think really hard. You actually don't have to play chess against little kids that are playing chutes and ladders. All you have to do is play checkers. It's not a big deal. It's like if I want to feel really good about myself, I'm going to play my youngest son in checkers so I can just destroy him and be like, bro, I just triple jumped you, you fool. You left right in my checker. I don't have to go. Hey, let's play backgammon or some high level game to defeat a child. I just have to lay out checkers, and so that's the thing about as a tacticianer, you don't have to.
Backgammon's not complicated. Kids play backgammon.
You don't have to get this like crazy, deep, dark, multi-layered, super confusing scheme. I don't have to do that. Human psychology is human psychology, and in fact, it's never changed. So now if I fill my team with the world's leading psychologists and sociologists and anthropologists, anthropology is huge to understanding the human condition, and then I attach some spiritual understandings through the different adepts and the mystery schools and the mystery religions, and then I have all the money and the technology to undergird my agenda. I really don't have to think that hard. It's pretty easy to do to accomplish what I want to accomplish.
Absolutely. You can, and the key is looking at it from a macro level. I mean, that was the best point, I think, that you made, is that you have to keep it simple. Look at it from a macro. And the news right now is painting this distressing filmongering message, with Biden authorizing deep strikes into Russia. Putin's not going to do anything. He knows what they're doing. This is all fear mongering. It's all a game.
Okay, it's 22 hours old.
Or it's just a massive psyops. So you really have to try to ignore the noise out there. And exactly what you said, you have to remain on a macro level looking out.
Yeah, and I don't know. This is just something I was playing with in my pathetic pea brain the other night. But I'm like, well, I actually think that the Russia-Ukraine thing is done. I was looking at it like they're using it as this push. They're going to get a limited nuclear strike, and then they're going to be able to justify blah, blah, blah. But as I watch it play out longer, there's a part of me that's still an option. That's still on the table. I'm on the fence as how this is going to shake out. Nobody could know, and if anybody tells you they know, they have no clue. Unless you're actually in those backdoor meetings in the skiff listening to what they're talking about, nobody knows how they're actually wanting to maneuver and play this out. But I can see this Russia-Ukraine thing being done very quick, very shortly, and it will look like a huge, massive success to kind of create some stability in Europe, in particular with regards to energy and energy transfer and energy reserves. Everything boils down to energy. But what most people need, again, going back to the macro, the play has always been China. Everything's always been about China. Everything's going to be about China. And
Shawnee, if Diane doesn't reply straight away, she's usually hunting up links. So she'll be back.
And everything is going to pivot towards China. But what you're going to have in the interim period is this initiation of like this just insatiable appetite for Iran and the proxies of Iran being Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, other different Shia-based Islamic factions, including those out of Iraq that filled the power vacuum when we pulled out of Iraq. They filled the power vacuum when we pulled out of Afghanistan. They're in all the stands, by the way, all the stands in Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan, and all the different stands, right? We have them in the different Balkan areas of the Balkans, from Bosnia, Moldova, Herzegovina, Slovenia, and all that. There's most people have no concept of the geopolitical sphere, which is why they don't know the macro, which is why they get caught up in emotionalism on all these soundbitey stuff in the Christian Truther movement, which I am the Christian. I'm a part of the Christian Truther movement, but I'm saying, like, it's things are hyperbolic and sensationalized in a way that they're actually unwittingly deceiving the very people that they want to communicate these truths to. But I can see they're setting the stage, and even predictive programming in recent shows, whether it's Kandahar with Gerard Butler, or Lioness. Don't watch these things. They're reprobate. Kandahar is not that bad other than the cussing, but Lioness on Netflix, which is a CIA-based operation where the centrality of it is China and Iran, and destroying Iran, and then getting to China and China. So you're going to see that be the drumbeat. There's a reason why Trump was put in office. Did everybody hear me? I said put in office. Trump was put in office. There's a reason why.
Nothing happens without their control.
No. And the reason why is because Trump is a war president. That's why nobody's going to follow Kamala Harris into war. Trump is got the tenacity, the testicular fortitude. That's the nicest way I can come up with it in my brain right now. He's got the testicular fortitude, the tenacity, the charisma. He does, would love him or hate him. He's got the charisma, the tenacity, and the mouth, and the strength, and the resiliency to galvanize, unify, push, and fight, and restore American military prowess, which is why his choice for Secretary of Defense is radically powerful. That dude's a stud. And even Tulsi Gabbard and these other different cabinet appointees, he has specifically put in power to lead us into a World War III. And then from it, you will get this centralization out from Jerusalem and Israel, two-state solution, and everything that comes out from that. So that's why when I say he is the last softening salvo, the last foundational aspect for the beast system, that's what I mean. What he's going to walk out in the interim, in the very near future, everybody's going to rally for it and clamor for it and come in underneath of it, but he's taking us somewhere. It's all taking us somewhere.
You're absolutely right. What do you think they're going to do about China in the long run?
It's right now there's a marriage of convenience that's going on. Like, so most people don't understand that China's economy is about 3 times over leveraged than ours. Free fall collapse. There's a reason why COVID was, the pandemic was loosed out and shutting down the Hong Kong protests and all that stuff like that. Their populist uprising is insane. There's been millions of Chinese citizens that have been disappeared. All the political dissidents, stuff like that. You have the free fall collapse of their real estate industry to the Evergrande and all these different aspects, right? That's why they're building all the ghost cities, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
China is toast. But guess what? So is the United States. Oh, and so is Deutsche Bank in Germany. Oh, and so is the Bank of Japan. Oh, and so is Macron in France. So is the Canadian government's in free fall collapse, right? Like a lot of the lesser European countries, I don't say lesser in a bad way, but the smaller GDP countries, all of them are except for Russia. So anyways, and by the way, right now, Iran is in its most significant populist uprising ever, where I think I was speaking to a Persian whose family is in power in Iran, well-connected, now a believer, raised Muslim, Shia, became a believer in Christ, family still well connected. comes and goes to Tehran multiple times a year, right? Like super well connected. He said I talked to him specifically, so this is primary source. He said 70% of Iranians are under the age of 30 or 35. I can't remember, 30 or 35. 70%. I don't even know how that's possible. And to have a population 70% that young. And he said, and they categorically in unity reject theocratic rule in Iran, which is why Iran must have war now. China is in a populist uprising. The CCP and communism is dead. The Chinese people categorically reject communism. They want nothing to do with it, and their economy is in free fall collapse.
Wow.
China must have war. Russia has internal civil war going on. Putin is not who he's touted to be among the general Russian citizenry. Russia must have war. Netanyahu and his cabinet in Israel are the most disliked government party and government leadership apparatus in Israel in the longest time ever. You would never know based on American media. They want to depose him worse than anything else. Netanyahu must have war. The U.S. economy.
I don't agree with that. Netanyahu's repaying the bastards who ambushed him.
Is in free fall collapse. Free fall collapse. Like, it is done. We're talking about $4 quadrillion in unfunded liabilities in the derivatives markets. It is done. Everybody knows it's done. Maybe Trump's put in power so they can pull the plug on his head and blame people like him and people who support him. Maybe that's what the play is here. We must have war. Everybody is in agreement we must have war. Germany must have war. Japan must have war. France must have war. Why? Because all oligarchs are losing control, and they can't lose control. So, in answer to your question, we're just trying to fit into this. China, well, actually, I believe, let me backtrack. I believe that North Korea has been established by the ruling elite of the world in unison to be the initiating factor for a global conflagration of a limited nuclear exchange with massive depopulation unto a great reset of all things, not just economically, but geopolitically, nationally, trade, markets, blah, blah, blah. That North Korea has been established as a scapegoat for the Great Reset for World War III. And it will be primarily based on the East versus West will be the simplified paradigm. But most people don't understand that China's in Mexico. China owns Mexico now. China runs Venezuela. China runs Peru. There's a reason why all the global elite are in Peru right now. Or no, not sorry. They're in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. They do have Peru as well, too. It's happening. And it's going to happen overnight, in a suddenly, in an instant. And that's why this great awakening, golden age, blah, 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 it's all interconnected. It is all interconnected on where they're taking us next. And next can be very soon. And the reason why I say very soon, and I know I'm like laying it all out. If we're talking macro, let me get to the hyper macro. The hyper macro of all the why of all this stuff, besides the Luciferian elite power, blah, 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 dominion principality stuff, but the tangible hyper macro is Apophis, the asteroid Apophis that all the planetary defense initiatives globally are fixated on is coming. They know it's coming. They've worked the math on it's coming, and they must have everything in place, including a significantly reduced global population. They must consolidate supply chains. They must consolidate manufacturing. They must consolidate all information so no disinformation, quote unquote, can get out there about what's going on. They must consolidate all travel. They must consolidate and limit mobility. They must consolidate all telecoms. They must consolidate all governance and information coming out from governance. And they must even consolidate genetic data banks and terrestrial-based earth science data banks, i.e. the Solverd Seed Vault in Norway. It all has to be consolidated now, like right now, because Apophis is coming, and they all know it, and they've all worked the math, and they all know exactly what its effects are going to be on the magnetosphere and on the crustal plate displacement and on the hydro conveyor of the oceans and on the jet streams and on the atmosphere. Like, you think there's climate change is a joke. Climate change is because of the effects of things that are going on celestially, and they have a cover story. EVs, 15-minute cities, all this is to reduce your mobility because they know what's coming. The thing that everybody took in their body to depopulate, blah, 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 and the PCR test, and everybody knows that now China owns all, and 23andMe and genealogy.com, they're creating genetic data banks because of what's coming. Everything is based on what's coming. And so the macro, even of the World War III, the Great Reset, all this different stuff can only be understood through the lens of all the war games that they worked out in 2018 and 2019 under the Trump administration, onto the creation of Space Force, onto this planetary defense initiative that Elon Musk is center stage at because of the asteroid Apophis, which will be visible in the sky in 2025, which its near past effects on the Earth coming in 2029. So that's what everything's centered on.
That is the super macro. But
that's the ultra macro.
But you're right, which is the reality of it. We've seen the data sheets that the World Economic Forum has released as far as the projection of the population for 2025. I believe we mentioned this last time. It goes over each country and its reduction of population. So a lot of people speculate, how are they going to reduce population in countries, some at 50%, some up to 80%? And the only way you can do that and know that you can do that is by the way you just described. And that's just the grim reality of it.
To be able to retain the vast majority of your critical infrastructure. And again, that's what most people don't consider from a militaristic perspective, where everything is about logistics. And so it's how do you do it while maintaining your critical infrastructure? See, if I were to tell you there's an asteroid coming and everybody has about 3.5 years to live, before there's a 80 to 90% reduction in the global population, well, I have infrastructure meltdown within a matter of 6 weeks because of human osmotic pressure. As Michael Young, I'm coining a word from Michael Young, human osmotic pressure and the human chaos factor that's resultant from that kind of information being out there. The infrastructure is burned to the ground. I don't care if it's power generating stations or if it's your IT guy at a major corporation debugging viruses all day long so that payroll can go out. It doesn't matter at what level the infrastructure needs to be maintained, it must be maintained. And especially as it relates to nuclear power generation. I'm from Illinois-Iowa border on the Mississippi River, a place called the Quad Cities, actually born and raised in Moline, Illinois. And that central place of that Mississippi River watershed, in my consolidated area, there's about 7 or 9 nuclear power plants in that Mississippi River watershed. You cannot allow those to cook off by any means ever. Well, I mean, look at what's going on in Ukraine. Everything's about the Zaporozhye power plant, these other power plants, things that are going on in all the rumor mill about Israel striking power plants in Iran, which, by the way, none of them have been validated. But it's about protecting the nuclear power plants. You cook one of those off, we all know what happened at Chernobyl. Everything's poisoned. For 1,000 years, watersheds are put, everything's poisoned. So you can't have people leaving their stations because they know there's an asteroid coming. You can't have your city workers, your city managers, your water treatment people, the guys trucking in the chemicals to treat the water at the water plants, the plants that are making the chemicals to treat the water, to treat the plants. It's like the infrastructure base is so fragile and radically interconnected. You cannot destroy or impede critical infrastructure. So how do you have a massive global depopulation without destroying critical infrastructure? You have limited nuclear exchange. in very particular key areas, and you have pestilence and disease. That's how you maintain the infrastructure, but yet reduce the population without creating a panic that would self-immolate your infrastructure. So again, this is why all this stuff is related. It's all related.
So where do you think the information that they keep planting seeds on us, talking about the quote, UAPs, how does that fit into the puzzle in your mind?
Yeah, there's a lot of different angles that come at the UAP, phenomenon. I have a working knowledge of it, an operating knowledge of that world, as it's from historicity to the antediluvian age to, even the crazy stuff with the different high technological advancements of ancient civilizations, from the Atlanteans to Lemuria to blah, 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 even things in Sardinia and Malta and elsewhere, and aspects that are coming out of the Canaanitic-based stuff, Phoenician, Sumerian-based stuff, and how it relates to the anti-gravitical propulsion, even things listed in Sanskrit from the Vimana out of like, this stuff is all interconnected. It's actually interconnected spiritually as well as technologically, as well as from a military industrial complex based thing. It is all interconnected. And I do believe that there is going to come a time where that's hard disclosure, because right now it's soft disclosure, right? Where the open, overt disclosure will be relevant to, again, a higher level of consolidation of the human collective consciousness, right? So anything outside of understanding that would be speculation. I understand the technologies. I understand the different use of these crafts, right? Listen to all the different whistleblowers out there. Some you got to dismiss, some you can, listen to and know and understand that they're true tellers. The governments of the world are very well aware of things that have existed in ancient history, pre-flood. Man, that's the word antediluvian, just means pre-flood historicity and stuff like that. I have a family member that was on Operation High Jump and with Admiral Byrd chasing things in Antarctica. I mean, it sounds stupid. It's not stupid. It's legit. But people always want to try to blow holes in anything I ever say. But I literally stumbled onto a box of undeveloped film in a family member's house in North Carolina, who I've never met this family member before, and met them. And I saw a thing on the ground, and it looked like a military ribbon. I understand, different military ribbons and accommodations and campaigns. And I saw two colors sticking out. There was tons of pictures in there. She's kind of like a curator. She's like my cousin is like a curator, and she's an older cousin than me. And I said, what is that? That looks like an Operation High Jump ribbon. And she looked at me and goes, what do you know about Operation High Jump? I said, girl, what do you know about Operation High Jump? We had this weird, I'm like, what do you know about? She goes, nobody knows about Operation High Jump. I said, I happen to know about Operation High Jump. And she goes, oh my goodness, sit down. And she pulled out, it was a medal from the campaign of Operation High Jump to my great uncle Arthur, who was the chief geologist, was his official title. He was OSS, which was a precursor to the CIA. He worked at Stanford University as a chief. I mean, the dude literally sounds like Indiana Jones. It was like he was a professor at Stanford University as a geologist. But yet she goes, listen, I have this box of film from your great uncle Arthur and his journal. Nobody's ever seen what's on this film. Looking through it, I was like, no way, they're on Antarctica, on the ships in New Zealand, boarding the ships in New Zealand. That's him, that's Admiral Byrd, that's blah, 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 blah. So we took it and got it developed while I was there on vacation. and got the private. Nobody had ever seen these pictures. It's him on Operation High Jump, setting up America Camp 1 and America Camp 2 with all the ships and the submarines. The first helicopter ever created is in that picture on the ship with them. Anyways, I digress. And what was in that picture is this Uncle Arthur was sitting at the table in the Forbidden City when Japan surrendered to China, issuing the surrender papers. So whoever Uncle Arthur was, he was not a Stanford geology professor. This guy was on Operation High Jump with Admiral Byrd. He was at the table when at the surrender papers in the Forbidden City, which no Anglo had ever been on. And she said a week after the lunar landing, your Uncle Arthur sat at this table and said, "You want to touch rocks from outer space?" And he pulled out a box, and apparently somehow he was associated with the lunar landing as well too. So, and she goes, never married, never had kids, never said a word. Nobody knew who he was. He was just Uncle Arthur. That's all we knew. He was always here. And here's his journal. Here's his pictures. So, anyways.
That would be a great topic for next time. That's a really, really interesting talking point. Everything about Antarctica and especially
and the Nazis. Yeah.
Yes, but because that's a rabbit hole that I've been down quite some time. But that's an episode on its own.
Yeah, you can't have Operation High Jump without Operation Paperclip, without Jet Propulsion Laboratory, without NASA, without the UAP program. So
yeah, it's all interconnected.
All very interconnected, and you can't have any of that without Theosophy, Thelema, the Vril Maidens, and Babylon Working with Jack Parsons and Werner von Braun and all these other guys, and the guy who started the Church of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. It's you. Oh my! Where do you start and stop? That's why I go like, if you don't have the macro, you can't conceive of what's happening today. Therefore, you won't have the paradigm for what comes next. So this is why understanding the macro is such a big deal.
You're absolutely right. Well, man, I had a good time with you today. We'll circle back again another time and talk some more. Just a wealth of knowledge, and I really enjoy having you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. There's always this thing is going to be ever evolving. Like probably by a week going.
You want to see Phil's last video? Yeah.
Oh, dang. Like there's another piece of the puzzle.
Bible reading. Rand would like to join me this morning.
Hang on,
for
man.
our daily Bible reading.
Hang on.
Ran Psalm 119. Going to be picking up from verses 25 to 48. And I'm going.
Okay, Phil, this is what comes up. Phil Baker is live, 119, 25, 48. I have no problem seeing it. Someone else has got two ticks, two thumbs up. So I know what's going on. I'm not the one who just posted. I didn't know he just posted one. Which one then? Which one then, Diane? Yeah, the cat. El Scrapidi. Look at him. Look at his Mexican mustache. Oh, ha, ha. I'm from Mexico. But I don't do good Mexican accents. I don't know which one you want me to show, Di.
Win the ultimate adventure for you and 9 mates to Anaconda Island. Every $50 you spend earns you the chance to win one of 2 trips worth more than $90,000 each. So head to your home of adventure and play more with...
Oh, okay. Hang on, then. Hang on.
A career in insurance helps build a more resilient Australia.
Okay.
Ancient scrolls that are talking about the time that we're living in now and the end times.
We can go back to the ancient church fathers and...
Okay, Phil, this is what it looks like. There's your channel. There's your live, and your latest says 1 month ago. But how come I'm getting your videos, but it's not showing up here? I wonder what's going on there. So that, yeah, that's what's going on there. I wonder what. How come I still get notified you're live, I wonder?
And they taught as well because they got this
2025 and beyond. I mean, it's absolutely...
Yeah, Shawnee, it says that on mine as well, but I still get notified when Phil's going, when he's going live.
Absolutely amazing. I just did an interview with someone else talking about events that are going to happen in 2025, but you've discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls, I mean, these...
Hey, Christina, good to see you again.
Are ancient scrolls that are talking about the time that we're living in now and the end times.
We can go back to the ancient church fathers, and they taught as well because they got this from the Essenes. The Essenes took the Great Commission and went and made disciples, and some of those disciples are what we would call the early church fathers. And a lot of them talk about how there's going to be 6,000 years of human history and then a 1,000-year Sabbath, just like there's 6 days of a week, and there's a Sabbath after that on the 7th day. And then after that, everything would be recreated. There'd be a new heavens and new earth. So the church fathers got that from the Essenes. Well, they also split up this time period into certain segments. So the way that we have, years and centuries and millennia, they had Shemitahs, which was a 7-year period. Then they had Jubilees, which was a 50-year period. They had Onas, which is a 500-year period, and then they had Ages, which is a 2,000-year period. And in their view, there would be it's 4. They would call it 4 ages, but it's basically like 3.5. So there would be from the time of creation till the call of Abraham. That's the first age. That's the first 2,000 years, and that's called either the age of creation or the age of chaos. Then the second one, the age of Torah, started.
Wow, it took 2,000 years for God to show up to Abraham. Wow.
At the call of Abraham and went until 75 AD. So just a few years right after the temple was destroyed. And then according to the Essenes, the last age would be from 75, or the church age. The last age would be the millennial age, but the church age, they actually called it the Age of Grace, which is amazing that they even called it that in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Again, 200 years before Christ was born. But they said that would last from 75 AD to 2075 AD. Now, what's really interesting about that doesn't necessarily mean
now it's doing the glowing thing.
That we have to wait until 2075 for Christ to return. That's not exactly what that means. So while these time periods, you can basically set these time periods in stone, you can't really set the events that occur in stone. So for example, the final Jubilee, the final 50 years of the Age of Torah was between 25 AD and 75 AD. Well, think about Jesus' ministry. That was really early on.
Shawnee, I never saw that Trump say that about Sundays.
That would have been from 29, somewhere around 29 AD to 32 AD. It would have been somewhere around there. Would have been the ministry of Christ. Well, that is really early on in that final Jubilee of the Torah age. The Torah age didn't end until 75 AD, and it's not that a certain event happened in 75 AD that caused anything. It was just that was the time where the next age was to begin. So a lot of prophecies had to be fulfilled. in that time. Well, and you see this at the end of each age too. You see like the final Jubilee. There's a lot of chaotic stuff and a lot of miracles. So the end of the age of creation was the whole Tower of Babel incident. The end of the age of Torah was the first coming of Christ and everything. And a lot of those prophecies were wrapped up well before the age of grace technically started. So we could see that again in our time. We could see we're going to be hitting 2025. And technically, because the calendars are a little, the Essene calendar is different from our Gregorian calendar. Technically, the beginning of the final Jubilee of our age would be early to mid-March of 2026, technically. But suffice to say, I make a note of that in the book, and then I say, it's just really a lot easier to say like 2025 because that's like where everything's wrapping up, because 2025 to 2075. But we could see a similar thing that we saw in the age of Torah. We could have all of these prophecies, including the tribulation and everything. We could have that happen early in our final Jubilee. I mean, that could happen next year. That could happen in a few years from now. We don't have to wait all the way till 2075. Now, Jesus could do that. He could decide that he's going to wait till 2075. But all it means is that by the year 2075, 2076, everything should be in place for us to start the millennial age, to start for Christ to start his millennial.
Hey, Tara, welcome back.
Age. And think about all of the things that need to be fulfilled. It's not just we have a 7-year tribulation, Jesus returns, and then that's it. There's still a lot of things. When you read the end of the book of Ezekiel, there's a brand new temple and a brand new city. How long is it going to take for that to be built? Well, the temple of Herod took about 40 years. And I don't think that Jesus is just going to come down and, again, just snap his fingers and a temple and city are going to appear. I think that's going to need to be built. And so if that takes 40 years, well, you subtract that from, or 40 or 50 years, you subtract that from 2075, and you end up really early in our final Jubilee where Jesus would return. So a lot of times when I talk about this, especially on my channel and other interviews and things, when I give that 2075 date, a lot of people get deflated because they're like, oh no, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to survive to 2075. And I say, look, it's okay. Like, Jesus could come back. Like, a lot of things can happen earlier on, and you can have all the judgments of Jesus that gets performed when he returns. You can have all that stuff, and then you can still have decades where things need to get set up. How long does it take to notify the whole world of how things are now? Jesus is reigning, and emissaries from nations are expected to come to tabernacles, and and people have to beat their swords in the plowshares. Like, how long does it take to get the whole world up on these new rules? It's not going to be overnight. And then again, especially with the new temple and the new city, and I take that totally literally in Ezekiel. That stuff takes time. So I believe it's very likely that we will have like the tribulation and all this stuff. And I'm not going to set a date to it, but I would expect that it would probably happen pretty early on in our final Jubilee, which would be from 2025 to 2075. I don't know exactly what year or anything, but probably pretty early on. Then when Jesus returns, take some time to clean. It's going to take some time for people to clean up the earth. It's going to take some time for all of there's like 4 different judgments that happen at that time. It's going to take some time to build all this stuff and basically get the world ready for the millennial reign, so that by 2075, by that year, everything will be done. Everything will be set in place for the millennial reign of Christ. So to me, that's really exciting. We're living in prophetic and very exciting times.
Absolutely, yeah. When I first, saw the end of the age being at 2075, yes, I was one of those people too that went, oh no, with everything that's going on, oh my goodness. And then I would be 1,000 years old by then. So anyway, but when I saw the pattern of what you were talking about, like at the end of the second age, the age of Torah, that Jesus, he died and was resurrected towards the beginning of that Jubilee, which was, so it wasn't at, if it was at 75 that happened, then I'd be like, ah, look at that pattern. But it was the beginning of that, and then I went, it was like, okay, great. Another way Amos points to around 2025, which is crazy. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to my channel, put a like on it, and also share the video. Josh, your information is so very interesting. Now, as far as the calendar, before we go on to another way of measuring time, with the solar calendar, like, okay, if we think that Rosh Hashanah is in September, how far off is it?
Yeah, a lot of those festival and feast days are different on the Essene calendar. But I will say though, because a lot of people, what I don't want people to think is, oh, what calendar should we be following? Because that's not exactly right. This was something for Israel. Now we can look at these calendars and see if anything prophetic happens on certain days. But there were dates on the Pharisee calendar as well, the lunar calendar, where Jesus did fulfill them on those dates. And the way that I look at it is, Jesus will meet you where you are. And I think that that's what he was doing. So we do see fulfillments definitely on the Essene calendar for sure, by and large, but Jesus even took time to fulfill some of what was expected on the Pharisee calendar as well. So yeah, there are feast days that are totally and wildly different on the Essene calendar, but then again, according to the Essene interpretation, they believe they had the correct days, where when they did these rituals, they did these festivals, these feast days, that those were the exact same days that the angels were performing their duties in the heavenly temple for that day too. So the way that I look at it for us today, it's like, well, the vast majority of us, not all of us, but the vast majority of us are Gentile believers. So we're not beholden to, we're not required to follow any calendar really. But I look at it more as a point of study. It's really interesting. You can find prophetic things in there that might lend some clues as to what's coming, what's ahead, what to look for prophetically. But I think there are times that you can find that on the modern Jewish calendar as well, because, like I said, again, even during Jesus' ministry, he fulfilled things on both calendars. More so on the Essene calendar, but he did fulfill things on both. So I don't have any problem with somebody who wants to look at the modern Jewish calendar and try to figure out if something's happening there. Very, very well could be. So I say check out both calendars. I think they're both interesting. And also look historically at what things have been fulfilled on each of these calendars and just compare the two. And so, yeah, I encourage people to do that.
Okay, now I'd like you to explain with the Book of Enoch, another way of measuring time. I found this absolutely fascinating, of the 10 700-year periods. Yeah, can you explain?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this is really interesting. So in the Book of Enoch, it's chapters, I believe, I have it in the book, I think it's like 93 and 96 or something like that. I have it in the book and I lay it all out. But Enoch, he's got a different way of splitting up these time periods. Now, he would have still adhered to the solar calendar. This is more of a prophetic way of dividing up the same amount of time. So it doesn't conflict with the solar calendar. They went by the solar calendar. They didn't necessarily go by this calendar. It's not even really a calendar. It's what Enoch was doing was splitting up the times a little different into 700-year periods, where essentially every day is 100 years in this 7,000 year time period. So he split the 7,000 year time period into 10 different sections of 700 years, and he gave a prophecy for each of those, for all 10. And again, the latest that people can say that this was written, the absolute latest, would have been
okay. You got something to look forward to then, Tara.
Around 200 BC. It couldn't have been written any later than that. So I think actually Enoch's a lot older than that. What we have are copies, but let's just say that 200 BC date is accurate. That's the latest that Enoch could have been written, including this prophecy. So you can get up to about the 5th or 6th week, and you could say, well, of course, that's all history to somebody who's living in 200 BC. But then after that, you can't really say that anymore. I mean, in the prophecies, I mean, you have the Protestant Reformation described in there. Obviously, you have the Great Commission, people becoming Christians. But what's really interesting about it is where we are in that time. So we would be in the 9th week, and he calls these sections weeks because they're 700-year periods where every day is 100 years. We right now are in the 9th week out of 10, and we are smack dab in the middle of it. 2025 is the exact middle of the 9th week. And what the prophecy says about the 9th week, it says that this is the time where the judgment of the angels is going to happen, where the vanquishment of evil is going to happen, basically the return of the Messiah. That's what this week is known for. So, you know, when we, and then the 10th week is all about the millennium and stuff, because by the time the 10th week starts, the world is already about 300 years into the millennium. So it's all about that. But so, you know, we might ask, well, why would we look at the middle point of that week? This whole prophecy it has a certain structure to it that's called chiastic. It has a chiastic structure, meaning it's like a palindrome. So the first week and the 10th week relate to each other in some way. They're structured similarly. And so in the first week, it talks about in the 7th part of that week, this and this is going to happen. And then in the 10th week, it also talks about the 7th part. You don't see that in any of the other ones. Now, in week 2, it says something, it refers to something about in the middle of that week in 2. Well, with this chiastic structure, the pair of week 2 would be week 9. That would be us. So that's why we look at the middle part there, and we would say, okay, somewhere around the middle, we should expect this to happen. And it's not an exact, I mean, 2025 is the exact date. That's the middle of this week, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those events are going to happen on exactly 2025. It's just somewhere around the middle. Like in the 2nd week, it talks about the flood, and it talks about Noah, and his birth was 6 years off from the exact middle point, but it's still generally the middle. So that's why we can't be too exact when it comes to exact dates. It's more generally around that time. So generally somewhere around the time of the middle of the 9th week, we should see the tribulation, we should see the return of the Messiah, we should see the judgment of the angels, all of that stuff. And so we're right there. We're a few years, according, if this is right, we're a few years away from that. And then you have the rest of the weeks in the middle. They don't give any kind of time signature for what part of the week to look at. They're just general. In this week, this and this happens. But to me, the most fascinating part of that prophecy is seeing that, again, that date, 2025, 2026, that comes up again, even in this other prophetic time count that Enoch writes about. And it points again to really the time period that we're living in now. So I would expect something significant in the next 2-3 years. We should start seeing some more prophecies being fulfilled. We're already seeing that. I mean, we've been seeing that since Israel became a nation again. So in a way, that's nothing new, but that should increase, but also miracles and things like that. We should see an increase in that too. Also, unfortunately, a big increase in apostasy, because that was another big marker for the end of the last jubilee of an age. Is there's massive apostasy. We clearly saw that at the end of the age of Torah with the Pharisees and everything. I mean, they killed Jesus, so that's obviously there's an apostasy happening there. But also at the end of the age of creation with the Tower of Babel, that's an apostasy. So and then when you look at the world today, we live in a world here in 2024, 2025. In our time today, we live in a time that I think sometimes we take for granted how weird it is, how weird it is that the world works the way it does. The world has never worked like this before with all this technology and everything that we have now. We take it for granted because we're born into it. But think about it. It really was not that long ago that we were in horse and buggies. And now we're shooting rockets, into space, and we have orbiting satellites, and everybody's connected through the internet, and it's just a completely unprecedented time. And when you think about it, there's no reason that it had to be our time where that could have happened. The Greeks could have done that. They had the same math, they had the same materials, raw materials. They had the same intelligence. They could have created an automobile. They could have had an industrial revolution. There's no reason why they couldn't have had that. But I think something was restraining that. And I think that restrainer, I think the veil is kind of thinning now. And it's allowing a lot more of these things to happen. You know, another thing from the book of Enoch, we read that when the 200 watchers fell, they essentially gave a type of technology to mankind that they didn't have. And it was, you know, through war and things, cutting of roots, astrology. But they didn't have access to that before, and they gave them that. So that makes me wonder if the veil is thinning, if the restrainer is loosening, you know, however we want to define that. Is it easier for fallen angels to provide mankind with, you know, maybe not like swords and cutting of roots like it was before, but now, you know, microchips and technology and the internet. And I'm not, my daughter came in to say hi. Hey, okay, I'm doing an interview, sweetheart. I love you. Go see mama. Sorry about that. It's totally fine if you wanted to leave that in there.
It's totally
she does
fine.
that she does it in a lot of my videos. But anyway, yeah, she's adorable. She's my whole heart. But so just thinking about, like, is it possible that we've now in this time, where it absolutely could have been possible to do this before, but now in this time, because we're getting so late into our church age, into our age of grace, is that veil thinning? Is that restrainer loosening? And does that allow evil agents to bestow upon us technology that we might not have been able to create on our own when when the veil is more in full effect? And I think that's very likely, because how else do we explain just how weird and different, and how much it changes year by year? I mean, I was born in the 80s, and even that was pretty technological compared to the rest of the world. But it's a totally different world today than what it was. I didn't have the internet when I grew up. We didn't have tablets. Cell phones weren't a thing. Cordless phones were just starting to become a thing, but everybody still had a landline. And today, you know, I didn't have a computer. I had a typewriter. But today, it's after 40 short years later, it's a totally different world, and it's getting so advanced I can't even keep up with it. Like my kids are able to. My 5-year-old is able to, like, do stuff on her tablet, and it's like, how did you even learn how to do that? Like, how did you learn how to find that app? And we're careful with it. There's all sorts of protections and stuff, and she just has like kids teaching apps and stuff. But she's able to log in. She's able to put her passcode in. Like, it's like I never would have been able to figure that out when I was 5 years old in 1989.
Hey, Carly, good to see you.
So it's just crazy to think about. So I think that it's very telling why this year 2025, 2026, why this time period that we're living in keeps coming up in the Dead Sea Scrolls. I think it's incredibly prophetic, and I think we're about to see a lot of crazy stuff, both good and bad, in our near future.
Very good timing.
Jesus Christ, I am asking that if you can, to please help to financially support this ministry. If you feel led to pledge any amount of money, it would be extremely helpful and greatly appreciated. There is a PayPal link in the description box and in my pinned comment below. You can also donate using Cash App. My cash tag is $Watchman1963. Thank you all so much for your prayers and support.
He's 61 years old, 1963, same as me.
God bless.
All right, a new survey telling us what we kind of already know: the moronic woke terms that the left-wing loons have force-fed us for years, especially our kids in schools and colleges, they're not popular. People don't want to use them. But confirming that House Democrats have learned nothing after getting shellacked in November 5th election, they're going full steam ahead for biological men to use women's restrooms.
Deuteronomy 22:5. The woman shall not wear anything that pertains to a man, nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. For all who do so are an abomination to the Lord your God.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace is trying to put a stop to it. She introduced a new resolution requiring members and staffers to use the bathroom that corresponds with his or her biological sex. I can't believe this even has to be a thing. But the move comes as the first trans member of Congress, Sarah McBride, is set to take office.
Bullying a member of Congress. This is what we're doing. This is the lesson that you've drawn from the election in November. This is your priority, that you want to bully a member of Congress as opposed to welcoming her?
No, we don't want to welcome a tranny. The tranny can get back on the bus and go home. We don't want it.
To join this body?
Of course, as always, legacy media helps Democrats frame the issue as the nice people versus the mean people.
Speaker Johnson has said he wants to treat every new member with the words dignity and respect. Forcing this congressperson to go into a male restroom, is that dignity and respect?
Forcing women to share private spaces with men is not dignity and not respect.
Joining me now, South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Congresswoman, great to see you. So as far as dignity and respect go, I'm wondering, Congresswoman, how have you been treated after introducing this resolution?
A very interesting question. So the height of hypocrisy, the height of gaslighting, they are threatening to kill me now because I, as a woman, am standing up to protect other women from men being in our private spaces, our restrooms, bathrooms, locker rooms, changing rooms, you name it. And so now they're threatening to kill me over this. I'm being bullied online. But what they forget is that, Laura, I'm the first woman to graduate from the Citadel Military College of South Carolina. I will not be bullied into silence. I will not back down. And in fact, I'm going to double down on this. I'm going to file even more legislation to protect women beyond
wow, I really like her.
In the nation. Because the simple question is, do women have rights or not? It's a very simple question.
Rep-elect Sarah McBride responded to your resolution saying this is a blatant attempt from far right-wing extremists to distract from the fact they have no real solutions to what Americans are facing. We should be focused on bringing down the cost of housing, healthcare, childcare, not manufacturing culture wars. Your response?
This is not manufactured. This is a person who's threatened to come into women's private spaces. And I'm a survivor of rape, sexual violence, and abuse. And I know how deeply vulnerable women are in
wow, she's a survivor of rape. That's a strong woman.
Places where we feel we have a right to privacy. And this is not okay. If you're a biological man, if you're born a man, you use the men's restroom. You don't invade our privacy. You don't come into women's private spaces. This is not a thing. I will die on this hill. It will not happen on my watch. This is a fight we're fighting for. And I'm going to fight to protect.
A tranny doesn't want to walk in any toilet I'm in. Trust me, you wouldn't want to do that.
Every woman in Congress, every staffer, every employee, every woman and girl across the country, they didn't learn anything from November 2 weeks ago. It's wild. It's insane that this is even up for debate.
One thing I know the left will say in response to what you just said is, well, it's horrific that you were subjected to any abuse or assault, any of it. But are you intimating that this new congressman-elect would somehow assault you in the bathroom?
The idea of a man walking into a locker room where I'm changing is actually, it feels like assault. I'm a victim. I have PTSD from the trauma that I've endured at the hands of a man. And I'm going to stand in the way solidly of any guy that wants to come into our spaces. And guess what? Sarah McBride doesn't get a say in this. And I'm not going to succumb or be silenced by bullies online or by the radical left. They lost big. And I'm going to push back harder than ever before.
Genesis 1:27. So God.
Have you seen that general? He's either a general or an admiral in the military in America. He's full on tranny. He's wearing hair and everything, lipstick, and he's a general. It looks ridiculous.
Created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. In Psalm 139, we learn that God fashions each one of us. For you form my inward parts. You cover me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed. And in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. God's creation of each individual must surely include his designation of gender. His wonderful work leaves no room for mistakes. No one is born with the wrong body.
Well, controversy over transgender athletes has taken a new twist. The women's volleyball team at San Jose State University suspended its assistant coach for joining a federal lawsuit against the NCAA. The suit focuses on one of the coach's players on the team.
Associate head coach Melissa Beatty-Smoos of the San Jose State Spartans women's volleyball team is under indefinite suspension after filing a Title IX complaint against the school. She says the player Blair Fleming is transgender and should not be allowed to play.
Safety is being taken away from women. Fair play is taken away from women. We need more and more people to do this and fight this fight, because women's sports, as we know it right now, will be forever changed.
The university stated, quote, the associate head coach of the San Jose State University women's volleyball team is not with a team at this time, and we will not provide further information on this matter. San Jose has not responded about whether there is a trans athlete on the roster, although several schools have forfeited games refusing to play against the Spartans. Spartans co-captain Brooks Lesser and other team members are suing their head coach, the school, and their Mountain West Conference for allowing a transgender athlete on the team. She also joined a lawsuit against the NCAA spearheaded by activist Riley Gaines.
It's amazing that other teams in the conference can stand up and just say, no, we're not doing this. And yet our school is still okay with having one person on our team that's causing all of these issues, and yet will not get rid of them.
Slusser says the overall situation has left her feeling unsafe, and there have been multiple threats on her life.
Well, it's retaliation, Jackie. That's what this is. That's what the message that's being sent loud and clear is: do not oppose us. Do not even dare to question our motives, or else we will get rid of you.
President-elect Trump.
Yeah, Kamala's vice president. I forget his name now. He's been gone for a week because I've forgotten him. Tampon Tim, they called him, because he put tampons in the boys' bathrooms in the schools. That's what Kamala's VP done. Tampons in the boys' toilets. Man, how bad's that?
Trump states this issue will be solved immediately when he returns to the Oval Office.
You just ban it. The president bans it. You just don't let it happen.
That would likely happen in the form of an executive order, according to the Heritage Foundation's Sarah Parshall-Perry.
That effectively undoes the initial executive order from the Biden-Harris administration, which told all the cabinet secretaries to take all of their federal laws on sex discrimination and expand them to include gender identity discrimination. From that point, a host of ills was birthed. So now the president-elect is going to have a lot of work to do, but the first thing he can do is issue an executive order, making sure that sex means male and female.
And she has said it would allow Title IX to revert back to its original intent.
It leveled the playing.
That tranny boxer, apparently men, I don't know the numbers, but let's say for argument's sake, we can throw a punch 160 pounds a square inch. Well, the women can only do 90 pounds a square inch at their best. So we nearly double them in strength. And for that chick, for them to she must have been a hermaphrodite. She must have been a hermaphrodite, because they wouldn't let a full-on doodle chopping tranny. I don't think they'd let that. So I think it might have been a hermaphrodite.
Field by the feminists 52 years ago. Unfortunately, it has been turned on its head.
This is insane. And what it's done is it's not just taken spots away from women on teams, awards from women on teams. It has asked normal people to deny the truth in life that men and women are different. It is forcing people to shut up and not say what is true.
Meanwhile, athletes from several other universities have filed Title IX lawsuits for forcing schools to compete against transgender players. A case is also now before the Supreme Court, and Perry says this will not be over until there's a ruling that sex in federal law means male and female. The High Court expected to make a decision by early next spring.
The phrase debased mind is found in Romans 1:28 in reference to those whom God has rejected as godless and wicked. The Greek word translated debased is adokimos, which means unacceptable, that is, rejected, by implication, worthless. In Titus 1:16.
He is over to reprobate minds. Imagine that. God's had enough of you and he wiped you and now you're a reprobate mind. Imagine that.
The Apostle Paul refers to those whose works are debased. They profess to know God, but in works they deny him, being abominable, disobedient, and disqualified for every good work. People who are classified as having a debased mind have some knowledge of God and perhaps know of his commandments, but they live impure lives and have no desire to please God. Those who have debased minds live corrupt and selfish lives, and sin is justified and acceptable to them. The debased are those whom God has rejected and has left to their own devices. Can a Christian have a debased mind? Someone who has sincerely accepted Jesus Christ by faith will not have this mindset, because the old person with the debased mind has been reborn into a new creation.
Shawnee, if all the women refuse to compete against the trannies, the whole process of that would die in the ass. If all the women refuse to fight them, what could they do? They'd have to get rid of them, rid of the trannies.
As we read in 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation.
Amen.
Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. Christians are basically new people. We live differently and speak differently. Our world is centered on our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Christians have the Holy Spirit to help us live a God-honoring life, as we read in John 14:26. But the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all things that I said to you. Those with debased minds do not have the Spirit and live only for themselves. Christians have been given the Spirit of God as a gift, as we read in 1 Corinthians 2:12-16. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we might know the things that have been freely given to us by God. These things we also speak, not in words which man's wisdom teaches, but which the Holy Spirit teaches, comparing spiritual things with spiritual. But the natural man, speaking of the unsaved, does not receive the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, nor can he know them, because they are spiritually discerned. But he who is spiritual judges all things, yet he himself is rightly judged by no one. For who has known the mind of the Lord, that he may instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. Jesus said, as a sign of his coming and the end of the age, there would be an increase in deception, false Christs who will deceive many, wars and rumors of wars, nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom, famines, pestilences, earthquakes, Christian persecution, apostasy, false prophets, and lawlessness, causing the love of many to grow cold. Jesus said all of these signs would come like birth pains. Jesus was likening last days events to a woman in labor. As the labor progresses, the pains increase in both frequency and intensity until the baby finally comes. As we get closer to Jesus' return, all the signs he gave us as a sign of his coming and the end of the age will become more frequent and more intense. All of these signs are manifesting around the world in our time.
You did that to bring Priscilla into it.
This morning, in a serious warning to US Embassy staff in Kyiv, just days after Russia launched its largest airstrikes on Ukraine in months. The US Embassy closing its doors and telling employees to shelter in place, saying it has specific information of a potential significant air attack in the city today. Overnight, Ukraine's grinding land battle with Russia would be bolstered by more US arms. The Biden administration approving the supply of landmines, a controversial weapon. It's another major US policy shift after the White House allowed Ukraine to use
Shiny, the drags back then, they didn't shove it down your throat like they do now. The last 10 years, it's just got way out of control because around the world, most of the governments were left-leaning governments. So that's why it got so bad. Now we're getting some right-wing ones in, maybe to straighten up a bit.
Range missiles inside of Russia, a move President Biden long resisted. Ukraine quickly firing 6 US missiles across the Russian border for the first time. Moscow saying it intercepted 5 of the missiles and firing back with a message unmistakably directed at Ukraine and the US, saying it may now use nuclear weapons if attacked by a non-nuclear country allied with a nuclear state. Russia's foreign minister at the G20 summit in Brazil.
We are strongly in favor of doing everything not to allow nuclear war to happen.
President Zelensky asked last night by Fox News what would happen if the new Trump administration cuts funding to Ukraine.
If they will cut, I think we will lose. Of course, anyway, we will stay, we will fight.
In the last days, the prophet Zechariah tells us Israel will be the focal point of world conflict, and he gives a dire warning to the nations who would dare come against Jerusalem. Zechariah 12:2 and 3. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem. And it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, till all nations of the earth are gathered against it. This prophecy is unfolding right before our very eyes.
Once again, Congress is fighting over aid to Israel. Democrat lawmakers are trying to shut down arms sales, while the incoming Republican Senate leader says help is on the way.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is promising $5 million and safe passage to anyone who returns a hostage from Gaza.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Wow, $5 million. Wonder how many hostages they still got.
Netanyahu visited the strategic Netzarim corridor in the Gaza Strip, standing alongside the new Defense Minister Israel Katz, who reinforced one of Israel's main war goals.
We need to ensure that Hamas does not control here on the day after, and that is why the things that happened on October 7th happened, and we're going to ensure that that doesn't happen again.
Netanyahu also directly addressed those holding hostages, which includes 7 Israeli Americans.
Whoever dares to harm our hostages will pay the price. We will pursue you and we will find you. Whoever brings us a hostage will find a safe way out for him and his family. We will also give you $5 million for every hostage. Choose. The decision is in your hands.
Meanwhile, in Lebanon, the IDF is working systematically to wipe out Hezbollah terrorists and their ability to attack Israel. In Beirut, the U.S. senior advisor to President Biden, Amos Hochstein, says a ceasefire is within reach.
So as the window is now, I hope the coming days yield a resolute decision.
But Sergeant Major Doron Kadar, who fought in southern Lebanon, says Israel needs to complete its mission.
So me personally, I feel that
I'm with him. I think Israel should keep going and get rid of Hezbollah completely. I'm on their side. I think they should keep going. They got rid of the Palestinians.
Complete control of southern Lebanon up to the Litani, where we have a defensible border between us and Lebanon.
In Tehran, Iran is back to threatening Israel for the IDF's October 26th attack on the Islamic regime. Meanwhile, the UN's nuclear watchdog says Iran is one step away from enriching some of its uranium to weapons-grade uranium, enough to create.
They've already done that. This is fake news.
4 nuclear weapons. While Israel fights a severed front war, on Capitol Hill in Washington, independent Senator Bernie Sanders and Democrat allies are proposing legislation to ban U.S. arms and military aid to Israel.
Genesis 12:1 through 3. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. God's foreign policy is pretty simple. If you bless Israel, you will be blessed.
Amen.
If you curse Israel, you will be cursed.
However, incoming Senate Majority Leader John Thune reassured Israel and the Jewish people things will change in January.
We will stand with Israel and make this and other support legislation a top priority in the next Congress. So to our allies in Israel and to the Jewish people around the world, my message to you is this: reinforcements are on the way.
As a sign of his coming and the end of the age, Jesus declares, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. The prophets of the Old Testament prophesied of these future military conflicts in Isaiah 17:1. in which Damascus, Syria will be destroyed in a single night. Jeremiah 49, the prophecy of Elam, which could infer an Israeli attack upon Iran's nuclear program.
Okay, Phil, did you sort it out now? Shawnee replied to you. So Shawnee saw your link. Did it work, Phil?
Psalm 83, in which the Muslim nations that border Israel will mount an attack on Israel in order to cut them off from being a nation. Ezekiel 38 and 39, known as the War of Gog and Magog. In this prophecy, a coalition of nations led by Russia, Iran, and Turkey will attack Israel in the last days in order to take Israel's wealth. Luke 21:25. And there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the...
You're on a phone or something, aren't you, Phil? Because you need 1,000 subs on a tablet or a phone.
stars, and on the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. One of the many signs we are living in the last days, right before the return of Jesus Christ, is nations will be in a state of perplexity or uncertainty over what to do in a difficult situation. This is exactly what is happening in our world today.
Manipur state has seen ethnic violence between the majority Meitei and minority Kuki communities since May last year. Security forces have established buffer zones to
I just checked, Phil. I got the notice.
Try to keep the peace, dividing it into Meitei-controlled valley and the Kuki-dominated hills, hampering the movement of people and goods in both directions and limiting access to state facilities. Transportation delays have forced up the prices of ordinary items, and people complain of extortion by criminal gangs. Violence surged again this month. At least 22 people have been killed since November the 7th. Curfews are in place and internet access has been suspended across 7 districts. The Métis want rights to land in the hills and to be recognized as a scheduled tribe, which would give them access to jobs in the civil sector. The Kukis have contested plans to award the Métis this special status, arguing they already dominate the state government. The tensions have renewed demands by the Kukis for their own separate state. The federal government is sending an extra 5,000 troops to Manipur, a law and order approach that so far failed to bring about a political solution in this often overlooked and heavily armed part of the country.
Fed up with the armed gangs roaming their streets, residents of Port-au-Prince took justice into their own hands Tuesday. Seeking to back up police, they clashed with suspected gang members, killing dozens and then setting their dead bodies on fire in the street.
We're not going to give up the area. Nobody will stop us, not the government, nor the bandits, nor anyone else. We're asking for unity because no one will force us to flee.
On Monday, a coalition of gangs demanded the government resign before launching attacks on several areas of the capital.
Germany's mobilizing. Wow, Diane, this is it. They're going to do this before Trump gets in power. Watch and see.
Police opened fire on transports they said were carrying gang members and then chased down those who fled with the help of citizen self-defense groups. The renewed show of force by Haitian police has been scattershot, and law enforcement operations have killed about as many people as gangs in recent months, according to the UN. Doctors Without Borders announced Tuesday that it would suspend its activities in Port-au-Prince as police have threatened their employees with death and rape. Last week, Haitian police stopped a Doctors Without Borders ambulance, shooting and killing 2 patients. With the healthcare system on the brink of collapse, Doctors Without Borders provided critical medical aid to thousands in the capital. The renewed violence is an unwelcome threat to Haiti's fragile transitional government, which replaced the prime minister last week. The new government has promised to restore security and tackle gang violence in the crisis-racked country. A UN-backed Kenyan police force has been deployed in recent months, but observers say it is currently too understaffed and ill-equipped to make any significant impact.
Jesus prophesied of future plagues associated with the last days, as we read in Luke 21:11. And there will be great earthquakes in various places, and famines and pestilences, and there will be fearful sights and great signs from heaven.
Cases of dangerous bacterial infections and viruses have been growing throughout the United States. An E. coli outbreak linked to organic carrots from California-based Grimway Farms has infected at least 39 people across 18 states. 15 of those infected have been hospitalized and at least one person has died.
Doctor, let's start with this E. coli outbreak. I mean, it really seems like every month we're talking about a new one. How concerning is this? It appears to be happening so frequently now.
Because we have such a diffuse supply chain for our foods, they're processed, they go through different steps of processing in different places. There are many moments where you could have an introduction of bacteria, other contaminants, and I think that's why we're seeing it.
There has been a surge in whooping cough cases in the U.S., particularly in the Pacific Northwest. Why is this happening, and how can we stay safe?
We are seeing an increase in non-medical exemptions from vaccinations. So in other words, people saying, well, I just don't believe in vaccines, or for religious reasons, I don't want to get vaccinated. And as a result, we have seen a decrease in vaccination rates. That's one important factor.
CBS News has been tracking bird flu cases in the United States. California has identified a child who has been infected with the virus. How concerning is this?
Well, we don't know how the child was infected, so that in and of itself is concerning.
Okay.
If this was acquired from another human, another person, that would be very concerning because it means that we may have seen human-to-human transmission, and that's what's potentially a signal, a red flag, that we could be moving towards what could be a pandemic virus.
One more, we've got Mpox has been detected, a new strain detected in the U.S. This strain appears to be more severe than the one that spread in 2022. I remember this, it was a big deal in New York City at least. How concerned should the public be about this?
So we are concerned. There's been an outbreak of this in the DRC in Kinshasa and elsewhere in Africa. We have been really monitoring to see when, not if, this was going to arrive here. There is a 2-dose vaccine called Jynneos, which can be given for Mpox. Unfortunately, less than a third of men who have sex with men who are especially high risk for this have been vaccinated. And so if you are in that high risk group, now is the time to get your 2 doses.
There are 2 key prophecies concerning Jesus' signs of his coming and the end of the age that are crucial to discerning that we are living in the last days. The first prophecy is found in Matthew 24:8. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Jesus was likening last days events to a woman in labor. As the labor progresses, the pains increase in both frequency and intensity until the baby finally comes. This is how end-time signs such as wars, famines, pestilences, and earthquakes will occur. They will become more frequent and more intense as we get closer to Jesus' return. The second prophecy is in Luke 21:28. Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. Notice Jesus said when these things begin to happen. Jesus was saying that when you see a convergence of Bible prophecy, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. We are witnessing not only the convergence of Bible prophecy around the world, we are experiencing the frequency and intensity of these prophetic events as well. Psalm 9:17. The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God.
The dangerous weather on both coasts. Wildfires are burning in the northeast, and life-threatening rain and flooding are set to hit the west coast.
Fire crews have been here overnight monitoring this location. This is at a park in Upper Manhattan where this fire sparked up. One of thousands of fires that have popped up all across the region in just a matter of weeks. This morning, those extreme drought conditions continue to choke the Northeast. Overnight, another brush fire breaking out in New York City. Firefighters rushing to douse the flames in Upper Manhattan.
They've got about 10 acres burning at this point. It is a second alarm blaze that they are trying to get under control.
The mayor declaring a drought warning for the first time in 20 years.
The reality is that we need rain, not only here in the city, but up near our reservoirs.
In Massachusetts, gusting winds fanning this brush fire outside Boston.
The elevation, it's an extreme challenge. First, fatigue for the firefighters to drag the hose up, and then just, pumping the water up the hill is a challenge.
Since October, Massachusetts has had more than 600 wildfires, charred nearly 2,000 acres. That's an entire year's worth of fire damage in less than 2 months. And in this drought, New Jersey's Wanacue Reservoir is at just 44% capacity, water levels 16 feet lower than they were this time last year.
Psalm 107:33 and 34. He turns rivers into a wilderness, and the water springs into dry ground, a fruitful land into barrenness, for the wickedness of those who dwell in it.
Overnight, hurricane-force winds packing powerful gusts up to 80 miles an hour, wreaking havoc across the Northwest. The so-called bomb cyclone taking aim late Tuesday.
Oh my God.
Knocking out power to more than 500,000 people in Northern California, Washington, and Oregon.
This is my street. It's literally fully dark.
Fire and rescue teams in Washington responding to down power lines and trees. One woman killed when a large tree fell on a homeless encampment, and 2 people were taken to the hospital after a tree fell on their trailer. While in California, an atmospheric river, a large plume of moisture, drenched the coast, while turning to snow in the mountains.
It's going to bring some significant precipitation to portions of Northern California. We're talking rainfall totals 10 to 20 inches possible, with feet of snow, several feet of snow in the highest terrain. This is likely to result in significant flash flooding and landslides.
The storm system, one of the strongest to hit the West Coast in decades, is expected to last through Friday.
With the sustained rainfall, the rising snow totals, the worry from officials is twofold. It is the extreme possibility of mudslides and, of course, flooding.
In the book of Job, chapter 37, 5 through 13, we learn that God controls the weather. God thunders marvelously with his voice. He does great things which we cannot comprehend. For he says to the snow, fall on the earth, likewise to the gentle rain and the heavy rain of his strength. He seals the hand of every man, that all men may know his work. The beasts go into dens, and remain in their lairs. From the chamber of the south comes the whirlwind, and cold from the scattering winds of the north. By the breath of God ice is given, and the broad waters are frozen. Also with moisture he saturates the thick clouds. He scatters his bright clouds, and they swirl about, being turned by his guidance, that they may do whatever he commands them on the face of the whole earth. He causes it to come, whether for correction, or for his land, or for mercy. Correction is the Hebrew word Shabbat, which means, literally, a stick for punishing, writing, fighting, ruling, walking, etc. Job 37:13.
Guys, check this out with Phil. Right, that's his channel now. And on videos it says last few, hang on. Okay, if you go to home, oh, it's not doing it. Oh, yes, it is. Look, if you go to home on, look, there's live. Okay, he's back on. Okay, Phil, you're back. I don't need to do this. Cool.
It can be translated like this.
Okay, that was over. Okay, this guy's a bit of a Trump fanatic, but his info is interesting.
We are living in an era of unprecedented global change and complexity.
Actually, that's not the one I wanted to watch. No, hang on, still not loading.
I have some crazy updates for you, my friends. This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to get into a ton of stuff in this video. We're going to talk about the story of Whoopi Goldberg. Apparently, she stepped in pretty big recently with a call for a boycott on a bakery. We're going to get into that. And actually, we're going to get into a ton of other stuff. We're going to get into what's going on with our economy. We're going to get into also this huge story with Matt, of course, Gates, and that's going to come out tomorrow. I'm going to get into that one, which, of course, you're not really seeing it in the news right now, but you will tomorrow. It's a pretty big story. We'll get into that. And we're going to get into some hilarious clips. We have this clip from Piers Morgan I'm going to go over as well. Pretty awesome, actually, and so much more. Let's just get into Elon Musk. Apparently, there was some sort of aid for 47, and he thinks he's a mole and called him out, some sort of golden boy, apparently. And so there's some big uproar over this, and it's kind of curious because, of course, the guy's claiming he's not a mole. But it is interesting because you remember last time, back in 2016, there was like 10 moles. Okay, so it isn't really weird to think there might be one or two. Okay, if there was like 10 last time, there might be one or two this time, right? You would at least be thinking, is there one amongst us, right? So apparently there was one person. What's his name? He's got a weird name. Epstein? How do you say his name? I don't know. This is a weird last name. Epstein? Epstein. I can't say Epstein. Epstein. I don't know. That's how you say his name, apparently. That's the guy, apparently, that he's calling, of course, a mole. Maybe is the case. I don't know. But it is kind of interesting. So that, I'm kind of curious. I'm thinking there's probably going to be at least one or two in there. Not really surprising. I mean, you would expect them to at least try to put a couple in there, right? So there's that. Whoopi Goldberg accusing a bakery of rejecting her order, claiming it had to do with her politics or something like that. In reality, that's not what happened. Check this out.
She said we had real problems that Whoopi internalized to somehow bias against politics and use that huge platform, The View, to go after this small but long-time institution in Staten Island.
Yeah, it's a small bakery. The oven broke. I mean, it's really that simple.
So the oven broke, but then Whoopi goes on The View and claims that she had some sort of political persecution. Oh my goodness. You know, claiming that they didn't want to bake her stuff because of what she believes in or something, when in reality apparently their oven broke. I mean, and actually this is totally backfired. A lot of people heard about this, and apparently there's lines out the door for the bakery now. Apparently she brought a ton of new business to the bakery in support of the bakery.
Yay!
You know, in spite of what Whoopi said. So it's kind of hilarious how that backfired, and now she's having to she's supposed to retract, but she's not retracting. She's doubling down. So the question is, are they going to sue? I don't know, man. It seems really they're probably not going to, because they're actually making more money off this, anyways. It's like free advertising. I would just be like, oh great, I got more people coming in the doors. I'm happy. Let's keep the story alive a little longer. So that's what's going on with that. And we're going to get into a ton of stuff. We also have a mole that allegedly was found in 47's entourage. So we're going to get into that story as well. Someone secretly there, not supposed to be there. We'll get into that also. And the story with Matt, of course, Gates, which they're going to try to stop him. They got some big scandalous thing coming out tomorrow. And so much more. Let's just get into this clip here. We have this one. I didn't play this on my other channel either. I didn't play that one either. These are some stories I didn't cover over there so much. This one has to do with 47's plan to essentially deport all, of course, of these people. We're talking upwards of millions, many millions of people, potentially 20 million. I don't know what the number is, but it's a lot. And so we do have some hints of what he's going to do. And I have a clip to play right here. I'm going to play it in a second. But let me show you this tweet from him, 47, claiming what this man, Tom Fitton here, said is true. He says that they're prepared to declare a national, of course, emergency, and will use assets from, of course, the military to reverse all that's happened over the last 4 years. This apparently is one of his plans. He said it was true. We also have this clip here. Let me play this, and it goes into a little bit more detail about all of this.
Just tell us a little bit about the details of this. Of course, he said during it that he was going to focus the beginning parts on the actual criminal migrants in the country.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that with the second Trump administration, he's going to be, even more aggressive when it comes to cracking down on.
And so it looks like her face is frozen on this. I don't know what's going on with that, but the video's not working, but the audio is. They said that they're going to first focus on the criminals. So he's probably going to go for the worst of them first. And as time goes on, he's going to go for other groups that are less, obviously not criminals or whatever.
I have 3 kids and the grandkids are coming up. It's a good weekend. We bought snorkels and flippers because it's on a lake. So it's going to be a really good weekend.
They are.
I'm going to take my video and hopefully I'll get on the net and I'll show you what it looks like. I'll live stream for like 20 minutes and show you around, but I can't actually stream because it'd be a bit rude doing that.
I mean, not so much criminals. I mean, not the type that literally were let out of prisons and just keep
Wish you could, Diane.
Like,
Plenty of
some
VP and
did.
vodka
And I think
cruises.
that's actually hundreds of thousands right there. From what I understand, there's like, I can't remember the number. It was hundreds of thousands of people that had criminal records that came in. Hundreds of thousands. So I think he's going to deal with them first. After that, and then he's going to deal with other groups as he goes along over time. So that's kind of what he's going to be doing with that. And so that's kind of interesting, understanding how that's all going to work out. But of course, before all of this occurs, we still have 2 months left. And of course, Joe, which recently walked off into a forest, this man right here, just wandered off into the Amazon rainforest. The very same day that he wandered off into the Amazon rainforest, declared that we are now going to allow certain, of course, things to be going on over in Russian, of course, territory. So now they're going to be authorizing the use of these right here deep inside Vladimeister's territory. And this, of course, according to a former, intelligence, of course, officer, his name is Rip.
Guys, I wish you could crash the party. We'd have a really good weekend. I reckon when things are hitting the fan, I reckon we'll be able to translate, because God's going to pour out his final spirit on the world, and it's going to be the most ever he's poured out. I reckon we'll be able to translate like Philip did, or like Grosvenor. What was his name? Henry Grosvenor. He used to translate.
Saying that this means we are now directly at WAR with them. So, of course, if you go look at the outlets, they're not saying this, but this guy's a former, intelligence, of course, officer. So I think he might know a little bit more than they would anyways. But so we have that going on. While on the same exact day, our wonderful beloved Prez walks off into an Amazon rainforest.
Why they go looking for him? They should have left him in the fat rainforest.
Hi, Joe. See you later. Have fun with the monkeys and all the wild animals in the forest there. Yeah, so of course, if you're wondering, if you're like, no, that's not what happened. Well, you even have Newsweek admitting to this. Wandering off into the Amazon rainforest goes viral. So even Newsweek admits to this, and they wouldn't admit to it if it wasn't true. Trust me. Okay, so you got that going on. Then, and already we have 3 European countries. I can't remember I saw an article. I think it was Sweden and some. I can't remember what it was. It was like 2, like Sweden, Netherlands, or something. I can't remember what it was. But 2 of them preparing for WAR. We have Germany as well. All 4 with this country. You see, they're all getting ready. We only got like less than 2 months left before he gets in. He clearly, 47 put out a message saying he doesn't want this to happen, that this is the wrong direction. He wants to stop all of these WARs, including the one in Ukraine. But of course, look what Joe does while he's wandering off in the Amazon rainforest. So you got that going on. And of course, Junior here, what is he saying? He says that, we got a commercial as well. Industrial, of course, complex are trying to start World WAR ahead of his father's presidency. What is that, Target or something? I don't know who that is. Michaels. Okay, never mind. Yeah, so you have that going on. At any rate, so getting on to some other stuff, I wanted to cover this. This is pretty hilarious. Let's just cover this part. We'll cover this next. It's so hilarious. If you're watching some of these people predicting, of course, the election, this is probably this is pretty funny. I'll play that in a little bit. And we're going to get into the Matt Gates thing next. But first, I got to mention food supply.
Good on you, Phil. Keep it going. Well done, bro.
25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. 3 months worth for $6.97. You can already see that they're already on plan E or F, or whatever plan they're on, to stop, of course, his presidency. You might want to get prepared. You never know what's next, my friends. And by the way, the next video I do is going to be, I think I'm going to do this, because there's a lot of people talking about 47's the anti one. he's the dark figure we've been talking about in Scripture and Revelation. Because a lot of people have this mindset in the church that everything's just going to get worse no matter what. And if something is getting better, they're trying to trick me. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. It's a ruse. And I'm going to get into that because I believe this is false, teaching that everyone's just gotten, saturated in their brains in the church that we're in the end. And of course, we are in the end, but it's not what they think it is. They think it's just going to be a certain way. And I'm going to show you how that's incorrect in the next video. I've already kind of covered this. It all comes from the Schofield Bible. It comes from John Darby. And all of this stuff was propped up. They were financially backed
they're the rapture guys, I think, Darby.
By the Roth, of course, child family. All these bizarre things you see in our society were funded either by two families.
Oh, man,
the
it's clear.
The Rockefellers, and I'm saying it that way for a reason, my friends. Okay, I think you know what I'm talking about. And you can see it all throughout. It's really interesting. All these really, like Sigmund Freud, the whole Femi, movement, all of this stuff, including the stuff in the church, was funded by these guys intentionally. And that's why everyone thinks a certain way. Oh, it's not going to get better. He's the bad one. He's the one. He's going to cause everything to go really bad. This is what he thinks. This is what people are talking about now. And I'm going to do a video on it because I'm getting sick of seeing it everywhere. And I'm just like, you guys don't even know anything about what you're talking about. You literally have no clue where we're at. At any rate, we are, of course, in the end, but the fact is, it's not the way they think it is. At any rate, so also we got this book here, The Lost Ways: How Your Great-Great-Grandfather Lived Without Electricity, How to Build a Cellar, Do Things Around the House Like They Did in good old days, hundreds of pages illustrated. You definitely want to get the printed version of that. Now, where I think we're at, just so you know, is we're at the end of an Ona or an Aeon. So we were in sort of like the devil's version of the Aeon of Horus, okay? That ended this year. We're under the White Dragon now. No one knows about this stuff because they removed chapters from the Book of Esther. I've talked about all this stuff before. We're going to be under the Good Dragon. The unfortunate part about when it changes from the Red to the White Dragon is things still can go wrong. And an example of this is during the time of Merlin the Magician, King Arthur. It went from the Red Dragon to the White Dragon, which then was the Middle Ages. Okay? The only problem was there was a really big event that happened right around that time where the entire sky got dark. Okay? Like some super volcano or something went off. So just because it's switching from one to the other doesn't mean it's going to be like all roses and sunshine. Okay? You got basically a war, going on in heaven or something. But I do think we're going to be going into a good time. That's what I'm saying. Although don't be surprised if the devil doesn't, pull a few rabbits out of his hat, whatever you want to call it. He's going to be trying to do stuff while this is occurring. So, of course, what this Darby says is like, oh, it's the end. Nothing's going to get good. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse until this is the logic that the devil wants you to have. I think personally, I think this is intentionally funded by the Roth of Childs so that people had a defeatist attitude in the church. Don't even try. Just give up. Why are you even trying? It's just going to get worse. Stop. You know what I mean? Like if you think that you can never get anywhere in life, are you going to get anywhere in life? No, you're not. If you think, oh, everything's just going to get worse. I ain't going to get a good job. Everything's going to get worse. You're never going to get a good job. You're not going to get any better because you think wrongly. That's the entire point behind what I'm saying. At any rate, so there's that. Also, my website, Jared Videos. And by the way, I'll probably end up writing books eventually. I don't know. I have to get around to that someday. Also, let's get into some other stuff. We're going to get into that as well. This Vivek one and Matt, of course, Gates. But first, let's get into this really quickly. This is pretty hilarious. If you want to laugh, I think it's pretty hilarious at least. This guy right here in the middle, Alan Lichtman, was the one who had predicted like 8 times the election correctly.
Okay, this guy believes we've already lived through the 1,000-year reign, so he's wrong there. He does have interesting stuff, though. I'm not following him for his spiritual awareness. I'm following him for the weird stuff he shows us.
Completely wrong. Completely wrong. He's just way off. And Cenk here tries to educate him. Cenk here from the Young Turks tries to educate him. Check this out.
Look,
we could get into this discussion, but one, I think you're blaming the voters. I think that's a terrible idea. And look, I debated Professor Lichtman before. I told him his.
Yeah, Sean, he does. The only thing wrong with his dogma is, like I said, he thinks we've already lived 1,000-year reign.
Theories about the keys were absurd. I was right. He was wrong. I said he'd lose his keys.
No, you were not right, and I was not wrong. And that's a cheap shot, and I won't stand for it.
Well, who won, brother?
Should not be.
This guy gets so offended over anybody saying he's wrong. It's hilarious to watch. And it gets way worse. This is just the beginning. It gets way worse. Check this out.
You don't know
You
anything.
attacked me personally.
You're so deluded.
Right. I've only been.
Oh, look at Toupee Tom on the right. Look how old he is and look at that hair. He's wearing a toupee. Good on you, Toupee Tom.
The professor for 51 years.
On this program, I've never been
Sorry, guys, you can be so shallow sometimes.
able to finish a thought.
I've published 140 books. I'm a peer-reviewed professor. You're a nobody. Right? This is kind of his attitude, even though he got it completely wrong. And the reason why, I already knew he got it wrong. I predicted he got it wrong 3 months ago. I looked at his keys. His keys are actually good if you know how to use them correctly. But the problem is he's got too much of the woke, virus, okay? He's got too much of it because he just believes whatever his phone tells him. He believed the economy was good. 2 of his keys, 5 and 6, were about the economy, long-term, short-term economy. He actually literally believed what they were telling him. Oh, the economy's great. Oh, everybody's doing good. What are you talking about, dude? Did you know what reality is? Do you notice people don't have jobs? What is wrong? You know what I mean? Like, what is wrong with him? He doesn't understand simple stuff. He literally ignores reality and just believes whatever he's told. That's why he got it wrong. And actually, we're going to play some more. This is pretty hilarious. Check this other one out. This is absolutely hilarious.
Hey, Alan. Right now. Hey, Alan, you deserve a tall glass of shut up juice.
Okay, I'm just going to tell you something interesting. In the election in 2020, the guy speaking, the Young Turk, I was watching his program because he had the election live as well. And his program was up for the night. And he was screaming at Democrats, "You've let Trump in again. What have you done? You've made a big mistake and let him in again." Because Trump was killing it when the polls showed. And when the polls closed, when they opened, Trump was defeated. And this guy wasn't in on the plan because he got up all the Democrats for not keeping Trump out. He didn't know they were going to steal the election. I think they stole the election.
So can you just shut up for a second and let someone who knows what they're doing?
You're so right. You're so right. You're so unified right now. So I will not sit here and stand for personal attacks, for blasphemy against me. You don't need to do that. You don't
blasphemy against you. Who the hell are you? Are you Jesus Christ, you loser?
The guy thinks he's like God or something. Like, I'm always right. I'm a professor. I have 100,000 books I wrote. I know everything.
And I wear a toupee, and that turns all the girls on.
Got this one thing wrong one time. Dude, you're like just wrong. You believed everything that you drank all the Kool-Aid, bro. You believed it all. He believed it. Why would you believe what they say, bro? What is up with you, man? Come on. Especially when they kept saying there's no recession, there's no inflation, jobs are great. What are you talking about, dude? Look at the actual data. Don't read CNN. Read the data. Look at the data, okay? You supposedly are all about data. Look at the actual data. Don't read CNN and look at what they say it is. Read the actual job data. Read the actual inflation data. Oh, look, they used a different formula than they used to just to make it look better. Oh, look, they just hide the stuff. Yeah, that's what they do now. It's kind of funny. You would know that if you actually looked into the data yourself instead of just reading what everybody else said. That's the problem with it. Okay, so there's a lot of other stuff we're going to talk about. You have, of course, the NFL apparently freaking out over a lot of players now using this famous dance, of the
Trump dance.
27, his dance. Okay, so apparently everyone's doing it now. I mean, it's kind of funny to watch. I've seen people in like Asia doing it, like Japanese people doing it. So I've seen like John Jones from the UFC doing it. Now we have the NFL. Apparently, every time they make a good play.
You won't see Camel Breath doing it.
And they like do the dance. It's so funny, dude. Apparently they want to ban this now. The NFL's like considering banning it.
Yeah.
But they won't ban the
I'm not
kneeing.
sure.
They won't. If you're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, it's okay to bend the knee. But
I'm not sure. Does this guy love Trump and Elon? Okay, Diane said yes, so he must do.
don't dance.
Guys, it's hard to find anyone that's not supportive of Trump. It's hard. Everyone's on Trump's side, whether they're wrong or right. It's hard to find anything, including the religious stuff, without Trump being mentioned.
When you're excited or happy, or when you did a win or a touchdown or something like that, never do that. So at any rate, so that's what's going on with all that. It's just kind of ridiculous. And to sort of back up what I was saying about the economy, we have a second airline going bankrupt. Second. So we had one yesterday or day before, Spirit Airlines. Now we have a second airline going bankrupt. And you can add that to Applebee's and TGI Fridays and Ruby Tuesdays, all going bankrupt. Oh, gee, I think soft landing, recession. There's no recession. Everything's great. That's why everybody's going bankrupt. Give me a break, dude. Oh, so ridiculous. At any rate, so you get that. That's what's going on with all that. So then we have Vivek here talking about how they're going to clean up the GOV, clean house, my friends. And it's interesting what they're talking about here.
Reform of the government, and our federal government is broken. It's no secret that it is a fourth branch of government, the administrative state that makes most of the rules, that creates a federal bureaucracy that's hampering our economy.
So he's talking about basically those that are unelected, the ones that make all the red tape, the bureaucracy, they're making all these different rules and regulations that hamper the economy. And,
Nice, Shawnee. God bless.
Some of this has to do with environmentalism. I'm all for saving the environment. The problem is a lot of these people that are put in these positions are kind of like the Alan Lichtman guy. They just believe whatever they're told. Okay? Like, if you actually research pollution, which I have because I took an entire course in power plant and pollution, actually, in power plant pollution. I took an entire course, a book this thick on pollution I went through in college. And back in the 90s, we already had super clean power plants even in the 90s. It was the 60s when we were really bad. In the 60s, we had really terrible pollution. That is true. We did really terrible. We'd put stuff underground, not even far enough, near water tables. We did a lot of really bad stuff in the 60s, okay? But the fact is, it's been fixed for 40, 50 years now, and the environmentalists pretend as if it's still 1960 and we're still polluting everywhere, when it's not even true. It's ridiculous. So they make all this like government tape, stopping them from building power plants, stopping them from, just all these rules that get in the way of business. Because actually
Wow, Diane, why would you bother meeting Soros? We already know his politics. We saw that with Black Lives Matter. Wow.
For these real estate projects, everything, they have to go through the environmentalists, and the environmentalist is like, Alan Lichtman, just believe whatever they're told, right? And they don't even, it's hilarious to look at because all you have to do is look at the numbers. The EPA is ridiculous. They have very, very, very stringent standards. And they had stringent standards in the 90s. It's even more stringent today. I mean, it's pretty much almost as clean. When it comes out of a power plant now, it's probably almost as clean as when it comes in at this point. My brother used to install scrubbers on these power plants. And so anyway, the point is a lot of that. So all these various organizations in the GOP, they can just gut a lot of these because they're just in the way. They're just literally a paycheck to get in the way. If you can imagine, like you're on a team and you're paying a guy to stop you from getting goals. I mean, it's literally what it is. And we're already got a clean system going. We don't need a bunch of people getting in the way of that. If they actually understand what they're talking about, okay, that's another story.
And Diane, let's not forget, we actually saw Trump say, you don't have to worry about election again. It's all been fixed. We saw him say that. So there's not going to be any more elections. So he's in on it. You're completely right. He lulls me with all his bullshit, to be honest. But when it comes down to it, I know who he is.
But it's few and far between. Anyway, so there's that. Let's get into some other stuff. We got this Gates, of course, thing that's coming out tomorrow. This is on Megyn Kelly. Apparently, they're going to say that he was paying for SEX. Okay, that's what's coming out tomorrow. Let's just play a little bit of this.
Throughout the summer of 2017 all the way to the beginning of 2019.
And how do you pay them?
Those were primarily through Venmo and PayPal payments. There was one payment through Representative Gates' adopted son through his PayPal.
Nestor,
That's
the
right.
adopted son. Payments would come there too.
There was only one payment that it was testified to.
All right, so you get the idea. So
Yeah.
apparently,
Exactly,
they're
Di.
claiming that he made these payments for women, of course,
And he backed the VAX.
to come to his area, and these women are purporting that it was for SEX. And the reason why I already, from what he said, there's one thing he said that makes me kind of question what's going on here, because he said that his what is it, his stepson? Well, I can't remember exactly what he said. Let me see here. Okay, where was it at? It was like his adopted son. I think that's what it was. Adopted son. Let me see if that was it. Adopted. Yeah, here we go. His adopted son. Okay. So if you're really trying to do something like this, you're trying to pay, for SEX, are you going to go to your adopted son and, hey, son, can I use your PayPal to pay for a SEX, worker? I mean, does that sound like something anybody would do? Does that sound like something anyone would do? It doesn't. I mean, obviously it would be something secret if you're trying to do that, right? So perhaps that's not what was going on here. Perhaps he was.
And Diane, that was his calm before the storm. Remember he said that? The calm before the storm. 3 months later, we got the, what?
Paying him to do work for him, not SEX. You see what I'm getting at? Because why would you use your adopted son to pay this? That you would want to keep it kind of on the secret, right? You download whatever you want. You would want to not let people know about what you're doing if you're really doing what they're claiming he was doing. See what I mean? So I'm thinking that something doesn't smell right. It seems a little off to me already, with just the fact that he allegedly used his adopted son to buy. You get it. You get what I'm saying. Yeah. So then I don't think I covered this, right? I don't think I covered about the mole. This I think is another big story. We'll get into this, and then we'll get into the alien stuff a little bit. Okay, so Elon Musk, apparently there was some sort of aid for 47, and he thinks he's a mole, and called him out, some sort of golden boy apparently. And so there's some big uproar over this. And it's kind of curious because, of course, the guy's claiming he's not a mole. But it is interesting because you remember last time, back in 2016, there was like 10 moles. Okay, so it isn't really weird to think there might be one or two. Okay, if there was like 10 last time, there might be one or two this time, right? You would at least be thinking, is there one amongst us, right? So apparently there was one person. What's his name? He's got a weird name. Epstein? How do you say his name? I don't know. Epstein. What's his weird last name?
Epstein.
Epstein. I can't say Epstein. Epstein. I don't know. That's how you say his name, apparently.
Epstein.
That's the guy, apparently, that he's calling, of course, a mole. Maybe is the case. I don't know. But it is kind of interesting.
Good night, Di.
I'm kind of curious. I'm thinking there's probably going to be at least one or two in there. Not really surprising. I mean, you would expect them to at least try to put a couple in there, right?
Okay, guys, as you know, I'm not going to be streaming for 4 days. So I'll see you on your Monday, my Tuesday. God bless everyone.
So there's that. But getting over to this UFO hearings, these are honestly very unproductive. Okay? It's just, I mean, honestly, we're not learning anything from what I can tell. It's pretty much everything you already know. I mean, what we already anticipated we knew back in 1960, whatever, when Roswell happened, is basically all they're saying. Like, oh, I think we can communicate with